ставши на коліно, своє полкове знамено, дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Відвагу нашу, наші волі, загиблих друзів імена, читаю нашого вімолі, я полкового знамена, дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Всю кров
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 375 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again on a Sunday fundraiser night.
And of course, we are going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine on the red day of the week, Sunday. Very interesting story about why the color of Sunday is red on this channel and why all of Sunday's markers show up in red. But speaking about that, the red markers always signify the very same thing every single week. The beginning of a brand new Sunday fundraiser. This Sunday fundraiser is being run for an incredible nonprofit organization that I would say is on par with Doctors Without Borders, which we've done a load of fundraising for, and this one is Save the Children. Save the Children has helped out around the world throughout a large part of the modern 20th and 21st century in saving millions of children from otherwise terrible fates, usually involving war. And I have to say that they've been doing an impressive job inside of Ukraine, and they've been helping out as much as physically possible. They are an incredible nonprofit, helping to save the children of Ukraine from Russian attacks the best they can, and also making sure to provide them sometimes with basic necessities to even allow them to survive. It's an incredible nonprofit. We've already reached 1.1 thousand. I think we're about to start reaching 1.2 thousand here in a second. And so please help out Save the Children tonight. Let me actually go over on YouTube real quick to throw in my $100 because I always throw in $100 every single Sunday. And this is actually, crazily enough, the first fundraiser we're ever running after the giant one that happened on the year anniversary. We raised $64,000 on that fundraiser. So no pressure, no pressure, but still, that was the biggest fundraiser we've ever run. That one was for Doctors Without Borders, and it's absolutely great to know that we're back running another one, and hopefully we'll blow through that goal in absolutely no time. And so, let me throw in my $100. It's kind of like my 2 cents, but a lot more than 2 cents. And if y'all want, try and match it. It's a good thing to match. It's fairly steep though. But try and like Anonymous just throwing in $250 right there. And
hey, 1.6 thousand.
There we go. There's mine. It finally popped up. So good Lord, we've already gotten up to 1.6. This is actually
This goal's about to be smashed.
Yeah, this goal is about to be blown away. But speaking of goals and blowing something away, two Russian bases, as a matter of fact, were blown away over the past 24 hours, and from what we've been told, hundreds of Russian soldiers have met their instant demise within these bases in the area around Melitopol. And so that's actually where we're starting our news off tonight. We're not going to be starting off with our international news. We're hopping right into the news from Melitopol, and funnily enough, usually we're never able to find thumbnail pictures that directly correlate to events happening on this very day. Usually they're from weeks, if not months ago, but the pictures are similar to what's being talked about. Today's thumbnail was actually very special because this thumbnail is one of the handful in channel history that actually came from the disaster that we're talking about, and so it was put up as the thumbnail. So that picture is actually a picture taken from near a gas station showing the Russian base in the background that is on fire and has blown up. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into Melitopol to our first little bit of news where we heard of these massive explosions at the start. So we're just going to wait for this Twitter to load. Once again, make sure to join our Twitter, link in the description below, and help the Lee Spring Army to spread beyond the confines of YouTube and on into other areas. But as we can see here, according to Miguel Loriero, the armed forces destroyed 2 military bases of the invaders in Melitopol, the mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov, claims. And we can actually see a picture right there of one of those bases in the background on fire and blowing up right outside of what appears to be a gas station. That's actually the picture used in the thumbnail tonight. And this source came from Ukraineform.ua, which is a Ukrainian news network that talks about the war in fairly good detail. And we can see that they have a picture. We actually have picture evidence that this base has been blown up. So very nice to know. And not only did Ukraineform report on this, but where our casualty report comes from, while I stutter my way through that statement, Kyiv Independent also reported on these massive explosions today. And so let me load this up here. And the bots are coming in thick, Matthew. Propaganda.
Yes.
Propaganda. But according to the Kyiv Independent, also on Twitter, the mayor, Ivan Fedorov, said hundreds of Russian soldiers may have been killed in the Ukrainian strike on occupied Melitopol. The exiled mayor of Melitopol, Ivan Fedorov, said 2 powerful explosions were heard in Melitopol and the Zaporizhia Oblast, possibly killing hundreds of Russian soldiers. We do know that the count is somewhere in the hundreds. We do not know the exact number at this moment, but it is very similar to school number 18 being hit and destroyed in the area of Makivka many months ago. Once again, hundreds of Russian soldiers being stacked literally on top of hundreds of tons of ammo, sleeping on top of it, so if the base gets hit, not only do the Russians lose all of that valuable and fairly expensive massive ammunitions, they also lose all of the soldiers that were calling that base home. And that appears to be what happened to Melitopol. There are pictures, there's no video yet to back it up, but there are pictures of these bases on fire, which is great to know, and hopefully we'll be able to get more exacting information in the coming days about what happened at these bases, what hit them, and what caused such devastating losses. At this moment, people are talking about what kind of munitions may have been able to hit Melitopol. If we measure this out with a ruler, Melitopol is HIMARS distance from the front lines, at least the northern side of Melitopol is. So it is possible that this was a HIMARS strike using of course, a normal HIMARS rocket, nothing like an ATACMS or anything similar. However, there have been discussions going on in the background, once again adding into something we've never gotten pure confirmation for, that these may have been ground-launched small-diameter bombs that were used. These may be a new kind of Ukrainian homemade rocket that's being used, although I saw the name of it earlier. I can't remember the name of it right here, but that one's in question. And also, of course, the Tu-141s are now also being brought around the conversational circles on this attack, because we've seen the Ukrainians use these incredibly effectively in the areas of Russia, all the way down towards Sochi and all the way as far as literally the south of Moscow in the area of Kolomna, where you can still see that news where a Tu-141 hit Kolomna. So, very impressive. A great way to start off today's news, and a great way to start off tonight's fundraiser as well, was with a great amount of news showing that the Russians have taken heavy losses, and not only that, they've lost a decent amount of supplies. In case if y'all don't know, in case we have new viewers coming in, or viewers who just don't know how the Russian supply lines work, the Russians use railroads for almost the entirety of their supply lines inside of Russia to transport supplies from one base to the other. That's why you'll usually find that Russian bases either have a railroad leading into them, or they are incredibly close to a railroad or a main line, because that's how they largely get their supplies. Whenever they start a campaign or a war, that same supply strategy moves directly into the areas that they're fighting in and the areas that they occupy. And we've seen that in Ukraine. And that's why a while ago we made a big deal about the Kerch Railroad Bridge being down for repairs, because that means that the entire affected area in red is practically getting no supplies, and they're having to get it out from elsewhere, most likely from the rail lines coming from Rostov-on-Don. Now, what does this all matter in regards to Melitopol? Melitopol, from what we understand, is the supply hub where these trains drop off a large amount of their inventory and cargo, and I'll show you how that works for Melitopol. So let me go down to Melitopol right here. So here's Melitopol. You can see the rail lines coming into the city. There is a train station right here. That's the Melitopol train station. They then take a curve and leave the city. Actually, I think that's some kind of a... Wait a minute, hang on, that's a grain silo, sorry, whoops. The Melitopol station is up here, sorry about that. Anyways, moving on out of the city, you can see a fairly extensive rail yard where they're most likely unloading these supplies, and they've set up a base. We don't know exactly where these two bases were. Somewhere around here, you could see that the Ukrainians were actually using this as somewhat of an Aleutian 76 dumping ground for a lot of the Aleutians that they were no longer able to operate or use, but the bases could have been a part of this airfield. They could have been somewhere near the rail lines. We do know that they will probably be near the rail lines. After they unload those supplies from the trains, they then take trucks, like Euro 4320s, load the supplies up onto them, and then drive to the front lines and drop off that ammunition for the frontline troops. And this is the normal way the Russian supply lines operate. And from what we understand, a normal railhead is only 50 miles at the farthest from the front lines. And so Melitopol may be the very end of the supply line for the rail network before it gets transported by truck to the front lines, because it is at the maximum range where a railhead would still be set up, because it's about 50 miles from the front lines. So very good to know that this was hit. This is a major supply network, Melitopol is, especially due to its rail connection, and also how far yet how close it also is to the front lines. So this being hit and destroyed the way it is big news, and hopefully we'll see that Russian forces in the area are either lacking supplies and munitions or something similar. Speaking of lacking in supplies and munitions, I don't know if y'all saw this, but our Twitter is absolutely incredible. I mean, like, Matthew has been doing a really good job with getting our Twitter off the ground and running. And real quick, if y'all allow me to give a merciless plug to this thing. One second, I gotta pause that. Y'all are hearing a reverb of me because I'm dragging the stream over.
I felt like I was having a stroke.
So here's the stream. We've already reached 2.4 thousand. Impressive. That means we're raising about $1,000 every 10 minutes or so. So really good, and I gotta thank you for that. Hopefully we can get up to 5K here soon. But y'all are watching me on the stream. We scroll down, we go to the description below, we go to the Twitter, a merciless plug for the Twitter. We are plugging the hell out of Twitter tonight. And it loads, and here we are. And I actually did this deliberately tonight, Matthew. Instead of putting this down as a news clip, I wanted to make sure to plug the Twitter, because Matthew is literally walking by my room almost every 30 minutes now saying, did you, what do you say, Matthew? What's the phrase?
Did you peep the Twitter?
Yeah, did you peep the Twitter? He's been saying that almost every 30 minutes now for days on end, and he's getting a decent amount of great news on here that we're also reporting on the channel, like right now tonight. So if you want to get a little first glimpse at some of the major bits of news we'll be covering, make sure to join the Twitter. We just gained like 3 followers right there. So incredible.
Hey.
And so we're
almost
gonna,
2,600.
So we're going to be moving down, and you can see another piece of news we'll be talking about near Moscow in a minute. But I got to scroll down a good bit down here. Because speaking of lacks of ammunition, because we've been talking about this a good deal, and everyone's always going, oh, you know, no backup, no information. And I'm always going, I get no respect around here. Oh, man. We got a report from the Ukrainian, the British Ministry of Defense today that says something fairly interesting about the lack of supplies and munitions. And once again, remember, this is coming from the Ministry of Defense. And while they have been largely correct and messed up on a couple of things, they are largely accurate as compared to the Department of Defense that kind of takes shots in the dark. It appears that the Ministry of Defense has some kind of a working logic that they're going off of with making this information. So let's read the intelligence update. In late February of 2023, Russian mobilized reservists described being ordered to assault a Ukrainian concrete strongpoint armed with only firearms and shovels. The shovels are likely entrenching tools being employed for hand-to-hand combat. The lethality of the standard issue MPL-50 entrenching tool is particularly mythologized in Russia. Little changed since it was designed in 1869, and its continued use as a weapon highlights the brutal and low-tech fighting which has come to characterize much of the war. One of the reservists described being neither physically or psychologically prepared for the action of using a shovel. Recent evidence suggests an increase in close combat in Ukraine. This is probably a result of the Russian command continuing to insist on offensive action, largely consisting of dismounted infantry, with less support from artillery fire because Russia is running short of munitions. Now, through all this, one thing we got is that the Russians are not even having enough rifles anymore to hand around to their soldiers. We're entering the Enemy at the Gates movie, which everyone in the modern day says, scholars say, that the Enemy at the Gates was entirely wrong. There was no such thing as the man with the rifle shoots, because the Soviets, according to modern historians, had a rifle for every man. But I'm finding that hard to believe, because the Russians in the modern day, having decades to prepare for a full-on war like this, and probably massive amounts of stockpiles, have run out of AKs, and they're giving guys just shovels. And
not only shovels, but mythical shovels, too.
Yes, mythical shovels. And not only mythical shovels, this thing has been around, this design of shovel, the MPL-50, has been around so long that it existed before the Franco-Prussian War. Like, this thing is old. Like, these things are incredibly old. You can actually see some of the older iterations right here, like this one from 1917 and this one from 1939. And you can see that the design hardly changed over the course of the first and leading into the Second World War, and then the post-war shovel still looks the same. It's literally the same shovel they've been using for over 150 years at this point. And that's how bad they're
that
doing.
shovel, that looks deadly. Oh my goodness, that thing looks like it'd have some leverage behind it.
The little half handle. You can't even get like a good swing in with this thing. Like, I'll say this though. I'll say this though. Shovels are deadly if sharpened, and it looks like this one actually has sharpened edges on it. Back in the First World War, it was actually very common for trench raiders to either take shovels or some kind of a trench knife with them into enemy trenches to conduct raids. But you have to remember that back in the day, that was kind of feasible because most soldiers were equipped with bolt-action rifles, like most Nagants, which the Russians are using right now. They weren't equipped with AKs or M4s that you could just switch to auto and just waste the guy in front of you if he just runs up to you with a shovel. So this is stupid, and from a logical perspective, to send guys running across hundreds of yards of ground with no cover whatsoever, only equipped with a shovel, and also this doesn't really hold up in the modern world anymore. War has changed enough that this kind of crap is just obsolete. There's no such thing as like a World War I style trench raid anymore, because you'll just get yourself killed if you're just using a knife or some kind of a spade. And that's a teabag they say, call a spade. And I'd have to agree with you. This thing is literally just a garden spade in size.
Yeah, basically so.
Quite pitiful, I'd say, Matthew. Oh, yes.
Very pitiful.
So that had to plug the Twitter, because Matthew's been doing a lot of work on this Twitter, and also it's gotten a large amount of followers really quickly. We've gotten up to, well, even as we're talking right now, we've gotten up to 2,655 followers, which is a fairly high amount. We never expected to even get that far on Twitter, and so help the Lee Spring Army to grow over there and help represent the LSA, along with our NAFO partners that are also on Twitter in massive amounts, and help the LSA to become a force to be reckoned with on the Twitter space. We might
and also, folks, let us know if we're tweeting too much or too little. I'm not really sure yet what's considered too many tweets per day. I'm doing about 3 or 4 at this point. Let us know those. I'm not that familiar with Twitter, like what's acceptable.
And so with that, now that Matthew's gotten his little request for optimization, we're now going to be moving on from the Twitter. It only has 47 tweets, and we're gaining followers by the minute, several every second. And I hope y'all join over there, and I hope y'all help out in a massive way and helping the Lee Spring Army to be represented over here, because Matthew's doing a great job. Also, everyone's saying, turn on dark mode! For some reason, man, I just can't do dark mode. I don't know why. I don't like it. And I'm sorry to everyone who's getting their DCC Prime.
Nice DCC Prime. Let's go.
Dang. Crazy. We've gotten to 3K. Let's go. We're over halfway there, and we've gotten to 3.12. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from this little bit of news from the Enforcer and at It's the Enforcer. And so with that, also, Matthew, we're going to be verified in a few days, aren't we?
Should be less than 10 days, so I think we have 7 left.
Nice. And so with that, moving on from our Twitter and giving it a merciless plug, it's now time for us to move on to the next big news that we've gotten outside of Ukraine today, which was in Moscow. Interestingly enough, many of y'all know that the Russians are into crocodile, vodka, and other kinds of substances that they abuse to a massive amount. We've never really known the Russians to be a big fan of coke, but oddly enough, a coke and gas plant caught on fire today, and I guess, Matthew, they were getting some weed in there. Give me some gas in there, also making some coke. I'm just kidding, y'all. It's a coke and gas plant. Coke and gas plant, I assume, creates some kind of gas, like natural gas, or some kind of usable gas. Coke, if I remember correctly, is a product of steel, or the process of ironwork. So I don't know how it's a coke and gas plant, but we got a close-up video here of the coke and gas plant on fire. And just look at that thing. It's like nice barbecue, bled. Do Russians even barbecue?
I don't really know. That's a good question, actually.
I don't know. I feel like we'll have to launch a study. We'll have to have a think group come together on that one, Matthew. Do the Russians have a barbecue or not? But anyways, Very nice to see that the coke and gas plant is burning down. It looks like all of the Russian crackheads and also all the Russians that partake in the 420 will be out of coke and gas for the foreseeable future, at least from this factory in particular. And of course, we're just kidding. It's not that kind of coke and gas, but y'all get the picture. Anyways, we're now moving on out of Russia. And just making sure that it wasn't wrong, we do not have any more international news today. It's now time for us to move on down into our location unknowns and check them out. We have a lot more location unknowns today than we did yesterday. We only had 3 of them yesterday. We got 6 of them today. So let's go through them and let's see what we got. So starting off with our first clip, we can see the Ukrainians conducting a river crossing with an amphibious vehicle that I have never seen before. It appears to be Soviet in origin, but I still have no idea what the actual designation is. So if any of y'all in the live chat know what this thing is, share it with us, and we'll probably try and get a little bit of information on it. But when you see it going down into the river, and then floating across, fairly quickly actually for a tracked vehicle, getting to the other side, with a little Ukrainian flag flying on top of it, and that's got to be like an entire company's worth of soldiers in the back of that thing. Like, they packed that thing like a bus.
Yeah, they did. Can that thing like get across like a lot of water, or can it only cross rivers?
And it really requires like incredibly good water conditions, or I guess you could say this is a very loose saying since it's a river. Good sea conditions, because if there are any kinds of swells, it will get swamped and sink. So the water has to practically be still for these kinds of amphibious open-top vehicles to be used.
Interesting. So you're not going out in the Atlantic with it?
Oh, hell no. Hell no. You're not going out. Indy Panda, $200.
Dang.
We're up to 3.4. Good Lord. We'll be reaching 5K here
Igor.
soon. Help the Lee Spring Army to reach the 5K goal. Because, of course, we have never failed at reaching a goal. And we just came off of the largest fundraiser ever. And I want to know the Lee Spring Army can help save the children of Ukraine to save the children. That's what their nonprofit is also called. And hopefully we can reach that 5K goal and help out as many children as possible. And hopefully blow beyond the goal, too. Because we are making progress on this one. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little interesting clip and on into our next bit of location unknown news, where we saw a wounded soldier in a hospital. The reason why we actually didn't put this inside of the interior of Ukraine, because usually clips like these where we know they're in Ukraine, and it's something on this context, they usually fall in the middle here. The reason why we didn't do that today is because usually, whenever we put those markers down, there are always missile attacks that happen in the center of Ukraine. And it's made me start to question, I wonder if it's because people on YouTube are putting those markers in the middle of the country, and so then those towns get targeted. So we're going to stop putting things in the middle of the country if we don't really know where they are. They're going to get thrown in the location unknowns instead, just out of an abundance of caution. But moving on from that, let me tell you all the story about this clip before we see it, because there has to be some context involved in this one, because it is a very touching clip. A Ukrainian soldier got wounded, of course. He was one of the unlucky ones, and he got hit. The unit that he was with stayed with him for 3.5 hours, dragging him through the woods, the fields, and the underbrush to get him to a medical evacuation vehicle to get him to a hospital. They fortunately were able to get him to a hospital and get him the treatment he needed to make sure that it didn't become gangrenous or infected, and he would end up dying of his wounds. And so the soldier is sitting inside of this hospital. Of course, we don't know exactly where this is in Ukraine, but his entire unit, pretty much, his entire squad that helped save his life out there on the battlefield, showed up to see him at the hospital. And it was an incredibly touching video. And I wanted to make sure to show this to y'all because it shows something that you never see on the Russian side. Russian forces would simply run off. They would never see their friends again. They would allow them to die in the field from their injuries or be captured by the Ukrainians. But here in this hospital, you can see that the soldier they saved is being visited by the entire squad that saved his life. We see them all coming in, shaking him, hugging him. When you see he's coming in, a chocolate cake. He's coming in with a chocolate cake.
This is the first actual like sighting we've seen of a chocolate cake, isn't it?
Yeah, the first time we've ever seen it. Well, no, actually, we saw that Ukrainian chocolate cake way back in December, and I was like, the supply line's supposed to be doing good for that chocolate cake to be on the front lines, but we can see him bringing in a chocolate cake here. The Russians are seething because no one had to die for this chocolate cake. They just went and bought it at the store. And so with that, that's the end of the clip. And it's really nice to see that this entire squad cares about each other so much, like many Ukrainian squads care for each other, that they would come and visit the friend that they saved his life out there in the field. And not only that, they saved his life. And that's something you don't even see from the Russians. And I've got to reiterate this again. In a normal Russian video, we were...
Dang, thank you, Trister.
Good
Jeez,
God,
$500.
$500.
What are we up to now?
$4.3 thousand. We're only
Jeez.
700 away from the goal. Crazy. That is wild, and I believe that did deserve that yeehaw right there. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Tristan,
it did.
for putting in that much to support Save the Children. I don't know, we don't actually know the metrics with Save the Children as to how many children get helped through a certain amount of support. We were able to do that one time with UNICEF. I don't know how many can be helped with $500, but I'm certain it's a massive amount. And I've got to thank you for sending that into this fundraiser, because I'm sure that the children and the families of those children in Ukraine will be incredibly appreciative when that support gets there. That is insane. And everyone give a huge thanks to Trister for sending in such a massive amount of support. But getting on back to this is something you never see the Russians do. Whenever we watch a video of a Russian soldier getting wounded or hit by a bomblet, his friends just leave him to die. They go running off the field, and we very rarely see them come back and try and give any kind of first aid whatsoever. And so the fact that he's even in the hospital at all, and the fact that his unit showed up on top of it, is just salt in the wound for what a Russian soldier can expect from his fellow squad mates and what he views as his friends. We're now going to be moving on from this little bit of location unknown news and on into our next one, where we saw the modern Maxim. A lot of y'all were actually talking, well, actually someone asked a while ago, what's the oldest weapon being used in Ukraine? And it's the Maxim gun. The Maxim gun has been around ever since 1883 and has been used in pretty much every single conflict after 1883 and all the way up until about the 1960s. It started to get phased out and we didn't really see it much, but in the current Ukraine war, considering that a lot of these were used by the Soviet Union and just kept in stockpiles for literally until the end of time, there are loads of these things in both Ukraine and Russia, and due to a shortage of weapons, a shortage of machine guns in particular, we've started to see the Ukrainians and the Russians utilize these to an excessively large amount, and now they're taking this to the next level. We saw, for the first time ever, a frontline Maxim machine gun. This is pretty much an infantry support machine gun, like a light machine gun, like an M240, and they somehow turned a Maxim gun into this weapon. It's crazy. So here's the clip of him using it. But I've never seen anything like this before. It has a scope, it has a stock, it has a suppressor on it. Like they went, and it even has a jacket over.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool. So here's the clip. I am Bayrato just put in $500.
Did we hit goal?
We just hit goal! Let's go!
Igor! My yeehaw cut out, but jugga jugga!
Jugga jugga! Jugga jugga! Igor! We just blew through the goal. This early.
How
It's
about
only
that?
been 40 minutes and we've already reached 5.1. I'm going to thank everyone already. I mean, like, we now have to go through the speech this early in the stream. I have to thank every single one of y'all who's helped out this fundraiser getting to this goal. That is absolutely crazy to think that we've reached $5.1 thousand in 40 minutes. We raised more than $1,000 every 10 minutes at the start of the stream. And not only that, this is going to be going to help save the children of Ukraine from unfortunate fates near a battlefield or way behind the lines inside the cities that are under missile attacks. I'm going to thank every single one of y'all for having a massive load of compassion for the Ukrainian people and making sure to help save the children so that way they can go to Ukraine and, of course, save the children. And so thank you all once again. If y'all want to continue to donate, it is still open, although we have passed the goal. And I wonder, how much higher can we go? I know that some people are going to be saying raise the goal, and tonight I am going to stay dead set on making sure the goal is $5,000. Considering that the Lee Spring Army got up to $64,000 in the last fundraiser, I do not want any of y'all to feel fatigued or exhausted or stressed to try and support a second fundraiser, because that other one last time did a decent amount, an incredible amount. Well, not just decent, it was an unbelievable amount of support. But if y'all want to support this even further and get it on up higher, I'd be more than happy to see it. So try and blow it well above the goal, but still, I got to thank every single one of y'all for helping to get this fundraiser to where it is. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this clip. An incredibly cool clip, and you can see Ukrainian ingenuity at its finest. On top of that, it has a bipod, which is probably the weirdest thing about it, is that this is a actual, like, infantry, or like a squad machine gun. And Anthony just threw in $200. How high did that get us? 5.6?
Yes, 5.6 thousand now.
Dang! Damn, son, where'd you find this? But anyway,
walk with your boys.
Matthew, I have to say, Matthew, that the folks like Justice Ryan who just put in another $100 and the anonymous who put in 50. I gotta say, Matthew, I honestly think they've got to be some kind of trapaholics or something like that. I did it. I don't even have to finish it up. But with that, we're moving on to the next clip, where we also saw the Russians try and fail to take a trench in infrared.
В окопе, возможно, 300 есть.
В окопе, возможно, 300.
We see the Russians highlighted. We can see a Russian right here, a Russian right there. There's a Ukrainian down here at the bottom of the screen, but I can't. I guess the Ukrainian's right there. Ooh.
Миномет! Миномет! Северо-западнее пусть возьмет!
Посередине окопа.
Let me make sure I'm watching this right.
Посередине окопа хохол.
Стой, стой, стой!
Посередине хохол.
Oh, this is even better, Matthew. This is a Russian filming this.
I'm not sure what's going on. Like, are they bombing their own people?
So let me explain what's happening here. This purple, like, color is messing with my eyes, by the way, but we're going to stick on this for me to explain it real quick. So right here in the middle of the screen is a Ukrainian soldier. He's in some kind of a foxhole or a dugout or something similar. Up here at the top of the screen and over here are two Russian soldiers, and they're both trying to assault this Ukrainian guy's position. We are watching this from a Russian drone operated by Russians behind the camera, because I heard one of them start yelling a slur about the Ukrainians. It sounds like ho ho, like, you know, like Santa Claus saying ho ho ho, but you cut out the last ho and you say ho ho. It sounds kind of like that. I don't want to say it exactly because I don't know if YouTube has that against its terms and conditions as some kind of a slur or anything like that, because it is. But nonetheless, I heard them screaming that because they're watching this Ukrainian guy take out both of the dudes we're watching on this video. Starting off with this guy over here. So you see one Russian sitting over here. He's not really moving a lot. This guy's about to get up and try and assault the Ukrainian. We can see him moving up right here. We now see him getting in there, and the Ukrainian shoots this guy down. He falls to the ground. And then he starts looking over towards the other Russian. This one's out.
Посередине окопа хохол. Посередине хохол.
We see this Russian trying to look over his dugout.
В середине первого хохол. Он, по-моему, кого-то ранил.
And that's the end of the clip. But it looks... but that was wild. And it's funny to see that the Russians were probably trying to film this, go, look at their guys. They have this guy outnumbered 3-1. There's even a third guy up here that they didn't mark, that you could see moving around near the end of the clip. They're attacking this guy 3-1, and two of them, this guy appears to be wounded at the end of the clip, because he's not really moving around much. He's just sitting there. And he took out this guy for certain. He just tried to run into that foxhole, got blasted, and then fell into it. So...
Guess what?
Guess what?
Ukrainians, they're in the game. Somebody asked for it. It's like somebody's gonna say cringe, but somebody asked for it. I had to do it.
I gotta tell you, we haven't seen anything like this in a while. It's absolutely impressive. I gotta tell you.
But still, I gotta say, good job on that Ukrainian soldier for holding his position, and not only that, fighting against the Russians in 3-1 odds. Like, this guy's outnumbered 3-1, and he was able to take out one of them, wound another, and then this guy back here, he's decided he's probably going to go on holiday after watching what happened in front of him, and he'll just go running off to the vacation fields in occupied Ukraine. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from that interesting little clip before the purple burns my eyeballs out, and we're now moving on into the Russian loss report. Oh, that was a smart one, Jeff Lieberman. He said purple haze. It is purple haze, isn't it? That's actually really smart. I like that. But anyways, here are the Russian losses. Ooh. 2 Bobcat skid steers.
Ooh.
2. 2 Bobcat skid steers. I mean, I gotta say, that's pretty nice to see. And not only that...
Golly! Herd of corgis put in $1,000.
Good
Did
Lord!
you see that?
Herd of
My goodness,
corgis.
that's the largest donation of the night.
Good lord. I feel like that's like some kind of passive aggressive way of telling us to put the corgis on camera. And if that is, we'll see. We'll try and get that figured out here soon. Thank you to the herd of corgis. Our herd of corgis just outdid Trister.
Jeez.
Good lord. I gotta think.
That might be Mr. Corgi's cousin.
Hello, I'm putting in money. But still, thank you, herd of corgis, for putting in 1,000, because that's certainly going to help out Save the Children, and got us $2.1 thousand over the initial goal. Like, hell, we might even reach $10,000 on this fundraiser tonight. Man.
Maybe so.
And so with that, guess what, y'all? Guess what? We're now moving into this loss report, because while a herd of corgis threw in 1,000, I guess he was trying to throw in $1 for every Russian soldier that was killed today, because 930 Russian soldiers ended up, much like the ones we saw in that thermal camera footage just a minute ago. So, quite a large number. We're getting on back towards those normal previous month numbers, and it's always good to see that, because it lets us know the Russians will be exhausted before long. Moving on down into the next category, we saw that 9 armored personnel carriers were wiped out. This seems to be average at this point in the war, especially now that the Russians are backing up a lot of their infantry with vehicle support in some parts of the line. And those are very few, mostly the Bakhmut and Volodar area. We are seeing that the losses are staying consistent around 10 to 15 armored personnel carriers per day. Not only that, but 10 supply trucks were also destroyed, bringing that number up to 5,300. An incredibly high number, and well above the actual number of Russian supply trucks that they had within their logistics units at the start of the war. They only had 4,000 supply trucks in specialized logistics units at the start of the war. Of course, that doesn't account for all of the trucks that the battalion tactical groups also have within them, because I think they have something like 30 to 50 trucks in a single BTG. But still, the entire supply section of the Russian armed forces has been wiped out at this point, at least by supply truck numbers, and they're starting to eat into the BTG's numbers worth of Euro 4320s. We also saw another 5 tanks get destroyed today, which is a fairly good number. We also saw 12 artillery systems also being taken out as well. Quite nice to see. We can see 5 drones being wiped out, 1 MLRS, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. We don't really know what anti-aircraft warfare system it is, but still, I gotta say, it's very nice to know that they were able to wipe out all of this today, including the 2 Bobcat skid steers, which is Matthew's absolute favorite equipment to be lost. And we were actually hypothesizing the other day that the Russians must have run out of Bobcat skid steers because we didn't see any more of them getting destroyed. But alas, Matthew, they were able to get those Huapeng Bobcats from China, and it looks like they just lost the 2 of those as well. So I guess the Chinese support
Must have gone to AliExpress instead of Alibaba this time.
yeah, it was Wish.com. Wish.com Bobcat. But
2-day shipping.
yeah, 2-day shipping. I gotta pull. Wait, hang on, Matthew. How to say the bean chilling thing. Here we go. Let me go get it. I had this down a while ago. I gotta go find it. 小上好爽哦，现在我要冰淇淋，我很喜欢冰淇淋。
And John Cena said that?
Yeah, John Gina said that.
That's right, John Gina.
Oh man, you gotta. Where in the world is John Gina now? I don't even know. But anyways,
WWE, I think.
Maybe. But still, the losses have been incredible, and it's great to know that the 2 Bobcats from China were destroyed today. Chinese equipment just doesn't match up to the incredible power of the Caterpillar Bobcat, or the other companies that make Bobcats in the United States. I don't know who they are, but they're absolutely huge, absolutely incredible. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the casualty report. Once again, fairly high today and impressive to say the least. And now we're going to be moving on into a fashion review of Russian forces. Many of y'all may know the fashionistas of Paris or London, where a lot of fashion shows are held showing off things that you can't wear realistically in real life. It appears that the Russians decided to take a more practical form in this like fashion show walk thing by having their prisoners walk in front of Ukrainian soldiers and show off the latest and greatest of Russian military style. And we saw an absolute beauty today. So here's the video. I'm just going to show it to y'all, but this is great. I'm going to have to mute it. When you see one guy wearing a cast, but What do we got back here? When you have to fight the war at 10, but show up for the company briefing at 11, put on the penny loafers, because we're going to Bakhmut.
Oh gosh.
This man is wearing penny loafers.
And apparently they couldn't replace them with boots. They didn't have any.
Yeezys!
Man, those aren't Yeezys. Get out of here.
Yeah, I think Matthew's got Yeezys. I have like the same pair of shoes. They're literally falling apart. Oh yeah, I think what are they like? Like.
Well, now the other guy's reputation's kind of gone downhill, so I don't know. I may or may not have them anymore.
Anyways, the Yeeby or something like that. I think it's a ripoff. Anyways, but still, this guy's wearing like sneakers, and the other guy was wearing penny loafers. I gotta say, I don't know who the hell told this guy that slick, like, sole penny loafers. What the hell do they call that on the bottom of your shoe, Matthew? It's not a sole. It's something else.
On the bottom of the shoe, I think it is a sole.
Are you sure? Because I swear the sole...
Or tread.
Yeah, the treads. The slick tread penny loafers would be the ideal shoe to wear in these muddy conditions. I don't know who the hell told him that. Whoever did this guy a massive disservice. But, man, this guy is winning the fashion competition, Matthew. And on top of that, imagine how terrible it must be for this guy, Matthew. It's like, okay, jump in the muddy, water-filled trench, please. And this guy jumps in, and he has no boots whatsoever to, like, at least keep the water out of his feet. Like, the water just pours in, even if it's a small puddle.
He's going to be literally dripping with the loafers on.
Bleed, Igor, you're dripping. Thank you, man. No, your penny loafers, they're filled with water, man. Bleed, PC. But anyways, that's the end of that clip. I had to say, that was the best way we could end up the location unknowns right here. And also these sneakers, because this is incredibly hilarious. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the location unknowns, because what better way could we round out the location unknowns than with penny loafers? And we're now going to be moving on into the northeastern area of the front line. But before we get there, Matthew's been running polls, and Matthew has one up right now that looks like it's actually kind of split. Like the majority option is less than 40%. And so with that, let's get into these polls and also recognize all of the top donors that have made tonight's fundraiser possible and getting it to $7.2 thousand in less than 50 minutes. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right. And would you like to address the polls or the donors first?
Let's address the donors first, because they've done amazing tonight. Like, especially coming off of last week, because Matthew and my thinking, our thinking today, that's the best way to say that. Well, I said there and butchered the beautiful English language. Matthew and my thinking, our thinking today, was that the last fundraiser that we ran on Friday probably would have exhausted everyone's support, because that was we didn't expect the fundraiser to even get that high ever. That was way out of our wildest expectations. We thought it may have gotten up to 40, but then it went all the way up to 64, well, really 65. So we were completely blown away. We didn't even expect that we would hardly pass the fundraiser goal tonight, because we were hoping that that everyone was going to take a break. But even then, still raised $7.2 thousand already, and the stream is still young. We still have about an hour and a half to 2 hours left on this stream before it even ends, and we're already well above goal. So I want to make sure that we recognize them first, and I got to thank all of y'all once again. So with that, let's hear them out, Matthew.
All right, and we're up to $7.2 thousand on the fundraiser for Save the Children, so that's absolutely tremendous and well above goal. And to begin by listing off our top donors of the night, up first, we have that $1,000 donation from Herd of Corgis. Maybe related to Mr. Corgi, but we don't know, but thank you once again for that very generous donation to the fundraiser. And up next, we have two $500 donations. The first one is from Trister1, and the second is from I Am by Rockter. And thank you both for your support as well. We also have a $200 from DCC Prime 1. We have one from Andy Panda, Avir Anthony, and those are our $200 donations, and thank you three very much as well. Then we have several $100 donations. The first is from Panama Floyd. Then we have one from Hal Rose, Barb Moody, Jojo, David Simbrot, David L., Justice Ryan, Ash Van Ease. Then we have a 50 from Greg Carrier, Mike Egypt, Commander Prankster, Mike G., Don D., AJ, Anonymouse, David L. Then we have a 100 Canadian from Rustin Rot. And we have a 50 from Magic Skygirl, Scott PGH, Magic Sky Girl again for a second time.
Good Lord.
I thought that was an error for a minute, but it's actually a second one. So thank you very much. We also have a 50 from Axel K, Marion Deemer, Starcat7, Hoodoo Texas, and then we have one from Nas Red. And that appears to be all of the top donors for the moment. And thank you all once again for the generosity. And we're well above goal already. And also, shout out to Steve Watkins at work for putting in a 100 as well.
Steve Watkins at work. He's not at home. He's at work right now. His name clarifies.
I like
that.
the specificity of that.
That's the enforcer at work. We're going to change the channel handle to that, Matthew. At the enforcer official at work. But still, I like the name. That's actually a pretty good name. I like it. And I got to thank everyone so much for supporting tonight's fundraiser. It's gotten up to $7.4 thousand. Who would have ever thought that this fundraiser would have made it $7.4 thousand, especially after what that fundraiser was able to achieve last week? I'm completely blown away. And the Lee Spring Army never fails to blow through a fundraiser and help out Ukraine as best as we can. And funnily enough, unlike other times that we've done this and people have asked, what's the total? What's the running total? We actually have the running total because I took a note of the last time we did the count, what that total was. It was $850,909. Let me make sure. Let me go back and make sure. It was $991. And now let's add about $7.5 thousand to it. And so that means that tonight, just off of this fundraiser, we have been able to reach $858,491 approximately at this very moment. Of course, every single donation that gets thrown in tonight will help us to get even higher because we are literally in the range of the final $100,000 that we need to raise before this channel has fundraised a total of $1 million in support of Ukraine. I can't think of a single channel out there, not a single one, that has managed to do that. And it's not even the channel. It all comes down to all of y'all who are in the Lee Spring Army. Y'all been doing an unbelievable job helping us to fundraise this long, this far, and this well to help out the folks in Ukraine. It's been absolutely unbelievable. And I've got to thank you all so much once again for getting us to, I was about to say even 158,000, but that's not even. That's all the way up to 158,000. Who would have ever thought that a channel like this could have done so much? And it's really just thanks to all of y'all. And I got to thank y'all once again for supporting these fundraisers so much and really making a difference in this war. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we're now going to be moving on into the polls. And Steve Watkins at work liked our shout out so much. He put in another 100 and got us up to 7.5. So thank you, Steve.
Let's go.
Let's go. And so, Mandy Carroll puts in 100 euros. You said 100 because you still can't remember what the euro sign is. You're like, you threw in 100.
Yes.
But one day, we're going to have to take like a currency symbol class because sometimes I get thrown off with other symbols that are not the euro, and the pound and the dollar. Let's see, I'm trying to think. It's rupees. I think rupees is the one that always throws me off. And also yen. Like, yen and rupees are two currency symbols that I can just never remember. But still, one day we'll take a class on that. Sadly, we're graduating college this semester and going on to law school after it. So I don't think I'll be able to...
sadly. Happily.
Yeah, happily.
We're graduating. We're getting away from the system.
Yeah, well, we're just moving right into the next one in law school. So I don't think it'll be that different.
I'm fine with that.
Well, yeah, I guess that's better. But still... With that, let's get on into the polls because these polls are exquisite tonight. Matthew's really been upping his game, especially now that the Twitter's been involved, because not only does he make the polls, he gets to see the news a little bit beforehand like I do. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. And also, I see a whole bunch of people following the Twitter page. So if you want to join our Twitter, it's down in the description below. Be sure to go join that because, as we mentioned before, I'm posting daily the news as it comes out, and sometimes before it even comes out, because I've got some more inside sources now. But anyways, we're moving on to our polls, and the very first one says, will Russian forces be so exhausted after taking Bakhmut that their entire offensive stalls? 63% said yes, Russia will stall out. 16% said unsure, 9% said both sides will stall out, and 12% said no, Russia will not stall out. And I think that Russia is putting everything they have in trying to take Bakhmut, because to them, it's a symbolic victory, as we've said for a very long time. And also, it seems that Ukraine is also throwing pretty much everything they have at it as well, and they're not backing out of there. because it's become very symbolic to them as well. So I'm going to say I go with the 63%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would probably have to also go with the 63%. The Ukrainians are not backing out. At the same time, the Russians are still going full throttle as far as this offensive is for them, relative for what they're able to achieve. This is full throttle. So I would say, hell, I would expect, really, seeing how fierce the Ukrainians have been able to hold the western side of the town and the only highway leading into it, I don't know. At this point, they're kind of showing that they've sent in enough forces and they put enough effort behind holding Bakhmut. So I don't really know. At this point, I'm gonna, while I remain with the 63%, I kind of feel like it's on the fence right now. It could be anyone's battle. It could be that the Ukrainians not only inflict massive losses on the Russians, but they also end the battle holding the town, although barely, or they may end up withdrawing from the town because the Russians almost complete the encirclement. I can't really tell at this point. It's an incredibly close battle. And, not to make it sound like it's some kind of a sports competition, because when I said it's a very close battle, it almost sounded like I was saying it's a very close race, but it's a very, very close battle. It's hard to tell at this point, especially with how the front line really looks on Deep State UA, what this could turn into. So I'm going to stay with the 63%, but really, it's up in the air at this point. It depends on it literally comes down to the actions taken by the commanders in the field at this point as to how this battle will end at this moment. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the second poll says UK intel says that Russia is fighting with shovels on the battlefield, and what are your thoughts? We kind of went over this earlier, but let's see what y'all thought about it. 60% said it proves the ammo shortage is real. 12% said unsure, 13% said it's just Russian status quo, and 15% said Russia prefers the magic shovel. So they're actually handing out these shovels to conscripts and people who are very, very untrained. So I'm pretty sure that if they didn't have any common sense to begin with, they should probably know that a shovel is not what you go into a gunfight with. But I'm going to think that it proves the ammo shortage is real. Putin is not giving Wagner what they need to be able to fight back against the Ukrainians in Bakhmut, and it's beginning to show. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that bringing a shovel to a gunfight seems to be a stupid idea, because, last time we ever saw anyone try and use a shovel against anyone, it didn't end well. It's not even in the war. It's just, I believe it was like a police body cam video. Like someone tried to hit a cop with a shovel and they ended up shooting the guy and killing him. So just going off of a normal person-to-person perspective, not even involving the war, it seems as though it's not a smart idea to use a shovel against a guy with a gun. So I would say that's pretty sad that Russians are literally just being given shovels, and we've seen that sort of with the units who mutiny. They're like, we've hardly gotten any guns or sent to assault. So it seems as though the Ministry of Defense is reporting accurate and truthful information right there and saying that they're being sent with just guns and maybe some shovels. So I would have to say that's a sad state of affairs, and certainly showing that the Russians are running out of steam at this point in the war because they can't even afford, apparently, to produce new AKs, which AKs are incredibly cheap. How much does it cost the Russians to make an AK-74? Let's see here. How much does an AK-74 cost in Russia? So the modern day price of an AK-74, at least according to defend.com, is around $400 to $800, with around 5 million AK-74s made and around 100 million AKMs being produced at a cheaper price of around $350 to $700. So you can see that, interestingly enough, these things are about the price of a Palmetto State Armory AR-15.
Really?
Yeah, I think it is. I can't pull up the price of one because YouTube doesn't like it when we pull up the price of firearms on stream because they think we're trying to sell them to people. But, interesting. I didn't actually know that. But they are cheap when you think about it in terms of a gun perspective, especially here in the United States, where people say a good gun costs around $1,200 to $2,000. AKs are incredibly cheap, especially to produce in mass for the Russians. And so considering the fact they can't even buy these cheap rifles in bulk and they're having to give people shovels instead, it shows you how badly the Russian government is doing in terms of its funds, and how much longer this war can probably last due to that. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and I think we're on to the next one.
All right, and our third and last poll for the first question segment says, Ukraine holds in Bakhmut, but analysts say Russian encirclement will take longer than expected. And what are your thoughts on that? It looks like 38%, which is the most popular option, said I fully trust the decision to stay. 25% said Ukraine should have left by now. 18% said unsure, and 18% said I don't think Ukraine will lose Bakhmut. Now, one thing we have to clarify is the analysts said it might take longer for the Russians to encircle it, but they still believe that it will be encircled and eventually taken. At least that's the analysis for now from, the experts. They're not always right, but they have a little bit more information, so we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I would say for me, and this is just for me, I know everybody's going to have varying opinions like we've seen in the poll. I think they should have left before now. I think that they're going to take heavy casualties from this decision, and it's simply not worth it because Bakhmut is not strategically important. And I think this could be a tactical error, but only time will tell. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, in my opinion, just looking at it from a battlefield perspective, if this was, say, a war game, and when I say war game, do not think about like Call of Duty or something like that. There's an actual kind of school where you go and pretty much play out, like a massive board game, a real-life conflict, and the military has done this a good bit throughout, well, every military in the world has done this a massive bit through history. If you looked at this, and the current situation on the front line, this right here is a liability. And while the Ukrainians have sent in reinforcements and it appears that they are holding it, this is incredibly dangerous and a very risky spot to put soldiers in, because if you put Ukrainian soldiers in here, and then for some reason, unexpectedly, the Russians conduct some kind of a breakthrough either on the western ridge or here on the southwestern ridge, and they were able to push up onto this highway or pretty much close off any route of retreat, the Ukrainian forces that are inside of Bakhmut are stuck there. So, from a strategic battlefield level perspective, this is quite risky and very dangerous. And so it would make sense for the Ukrainians, at least on that level, to withdraw. But there may be other things at play here that we don't really have an understanding of or don't really know about that is leading the Ukrainians to hold Bakhmut. One thing we know for certain is that it's not a strategic reason, because Bakhmut has no real strategic value, and we've understood that ever since the beginning of this battle. And the only reason Bakhmut is being taken, and we've been saying this for months now, is that Bakhmut was the only thing that was close enough to the front line of any reasonable size that the Russians could try and set an objective and take it for a quick, note that, a quick propaganda victory. Over the course of 5 months, obviously a quick propaganda victory never came to be. It's been a very long and very bloody battle for the Russians, and they're finally maybe going to take Bakhmut, but after heavy losses. So, in my opinion, it would be smart for the Ukrainians to withdraw, and I would have to agree with around the 26 to 28% of y'all who said it's interesting that the Ukrainians have not already left, because from the frontline perspective, normally they would have. So with that, I hope that does address that for a little while. I see a lot of people throwing in some interesting ideas actually in the live chat. Like Ray P said, it could be a diversion. It could be, and they could be trying to launch an offensive elsewhere, and they're keeping Russian attention down here, because think about it, the attention of the Russian command will be on Bakhmut for however long this frontline condition exists. This is just on the cusp of an encirclement and the cusp of a Pyrrhic victory for the Russians. And so a lot of the Russian commanders' focus on the big picture level will be focused on this specific area. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians could be building up forces elsewhere on the front line to launch a lightning offensive or a blitzkrieg like they were able to pull off in Balaklia and also in Kherson when the Russians started to withdraw. So that could be the case. That is a fairly good point. And we don't have, and of course, while a lot of people out there always act like they just know what's happening in Bakhmut and why they're doing things, I'm viewing it from the perspective of the information and knowledge that we have based off of video and picture evidence and what people are saying about it and what is common sense and what people have done throughout history. But that doesn't mean that that is the right way to look at this. There may be stuff in the background that we have no idea about, that the Ukrainian government knows about, but we have no clue of in the public. So with that,
It could be the Ukrainians know that if they can exhaust the Russians enough in Bakhmut, that they simply won't be able to continue on beyond it. But we don't know that information ourselves. So, just from the surface, it looks like because it's very dangerous in Bakhmut, we have to recognize that even though it is people's homes and stuff, and there's about 4,500 civilians remaining that don't want to leave, it is very dangerous. But we could be missing some potentially. It's possible.
Yeah, and and on top of that, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, I won't go through that whole thing." I think we say that every night with Bakhmut because it's starting. It's starting because we've been covering the Battle of Bakhmut so long. We've seen where nobody cared about the battle, and we would go through the news and we would cover it because even on our channel, it was a small sideshow because nothing was really going on down there. And on top of that, it didn't really have any strategic value, anyways. And I've slowly seen that over about the past month and a half, people have gone from knowing that there is no significance whatsoever to the town of Bakhmut as a resource or an asset for the Russian military if they were able to take it, to now, for some reason, people are trying to spin the idea that all of the stakes for the entire war are on Bakhmut. So it doesn't make any sense. And I have to make that clear as many times as possible because we've been here covering this ever since the Battle of Bakhmut was the Battle of Slitvodarsk all the way down near this little reservoir. This town has no strategic importance. And I don't know who are the people out there who are starting to make it sound like it has strategic importance, because it never is. It never was strategically important. It doesn't matter whether Ukrainians lose this town or not. It's just a lost battle. It doesn't mean that the war is going to be lost. And on top of that, it's not even important as a town. Slavyansk and Kramatorsk are important. Severodonetsk and Lysychansk are actually important. Yet we saw nothing come out of the defeat at Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. And that was far more important of a battle than Bakhmut ever could be, even with the amount of losses and the amount of effort that the Russians have put into trying to take it, and how much effort the Ukrainians are putting into trying to hold it. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I believe we're out of polls.
And we are out of polls. So we're moving on to our live chat questions. We'll take 3 of them like we usually do on Sunday. And our very first one goes to let's see, Adam Lee Fox. He wants us to check out some pictures that he took himself in Kherson. He is over in Ukraine right now, going around Kherson, the city. So, Enforcer, I sent those pictures to you in your Discord DM if you'd like to take a peek and show them to the audience.
And let's take a peep. So let's see here. There we go. Oh, yeah, by the way, Matthew, that was a funny video. Anyway, moving on down here. We can see this was taken in Kherson?
It was.
Oh, wow. Well, look at this, y'all. We're getting a first-hand, the never-seen-before pictures from Adam Lee Fox, and I thank you for sharing them with us, of what Kherson looks like. Now, we don't know where these pictures were taken in the town, and if I had to take a guess, I don't know if I'm correct in saying this, Adam Lee Fox, these are probably closer to the shoreline of the river than deep inside in the area of Chernopapivka or anywhere like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. But we can see here a Ukrainian man with a bicycle. It appears that he has some kind of fabrics or polyesters on the front of that thing, and he's bicycling through some damaged and partially destroyed buildings and a tank trap right here on the road. And the second picture shows a man walking down the street with some shopping bags, most likely coming back from a trip to the store, looking at a building, a Khrushchevka block, that had been partially destroyed during a barrage earlier on in the war, or during the current situation right now where the Ukrainians were able to liberate the town, but the Russians continue to barrage it from the other side of the Dnipro River. So very interesting to see, and very cool to know that a member of the Lee Spring Army, Adam Lee Fox, was able to share these pictures with us all the way from Kherson and show us the reality of what some of these places look like. And that's, of course, why we are always running fundraisers to help out people in Ukraine, whether it be through Doctors Without Borders, Save the Children, or any other organization, because they go over there to cities like Kherson and they help out the people who either were displaced in these houses or were wounded during these attacks. And I got to thank you so much for sharing this with us, Adam Lee Fox. I hope you're safe over there and all right. It is a dangerous place right now, and I got to thank you so much for sharing these pictures with us, because these, as far as I understand it, are nowhere else in the world except for right here in this Discord and probably on your camera roll. And so thank you so much once again for sharing these special pictures with us. And with that, I think we're moving on into the questions, unless if that counted as our first question.
So that counted as our first question because I had to add it to the spreadsheet so I didn't forget to mention it. But Adam, thank you again for sending me those pictures. And also, real quick, we're up to $8,400 on the fundraiser. We've had some massive donations. Yes, indeed. Yeehaw. And we've had some massive donations since the last time we called it out. I just want to say thanks to James Reyes for putting in a 200, as well as David L. and Activista for each putting in a 100. And then we have a 50 from Dad Good, Colleen Emsley, Zuan Tran, Tangen, formerly known as Tangen Bragiri, and WL. And thank you all very much for those very, very large donations.
And I got to thank y'all as well for the support to this fundraiser. While we, of course, reached the goal a while ago, y'all have helped us get $3,500 over the goal. Really crazy to think. I'm sure that we'll probably be twice over goal at the end of tonight's stream, probably around $10,000 if I had to take a guess. And I've got to thank all of y'all so much once again for supporting that fundraiser and helping to save the children of Ukraine through Save the Children, the nonprofit. I have to say that after every time I say their name, because when you sit there and say Save the Children with Save the Children, it sounds like you're psychotic because you're saying like the same thing twice with just with in the middle. But still, thank you all for helping to support this fundraiser and save those children. And with that, we're now moving on into our second question.
All right. And our second question goes to Plexus Gaming, who said, did you see that there was a second derailment in Ohio in less than a month?
Yes, there was a second derailment in Ohio, and y'all are going to be surprised to believe this. This is an interesting question about American railroad infrastructure. Railroads in this country are privately owned. Most railroads around the world, especially in European countries, are actually nationally owned. The railroads the trains ride on are. Like, for example, we'll take a look at the United Kingdom. I'll explain how this works and why this actually isn't that wild, and also why no one really picked up on the news of the first one burning for a good bit. But anyways, in the United Kingdom, there's this company, it's a government-run company called National Rail. National Rail's job as pretty much a government-subsidized company, almost run by the government, is to maintain and operate Britain's rail infrastructure, like the railroads, the signal boxes, and such things like that. There are private companies in the United Kingdom, though. That would be a misstatement to say there isn't. There are private companies like Great Western Railway, the LNER. I don't know if the LNER is still operating. I think their franchise dropped dead. Don't really know. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then there's also GBRF, EWS, a whole bunch of other railroad companies, but they do not own the rails that those trains ride on. They only own the trains and some of the rolling stock, or all of the rolling stock that they use. That is unlike the United States. The United States has private railroad ownership, except for a few exclusive railroads that are owned by Amtrak, and most of those you'll find in the Northeast Corridor. In the United States, companies like Union Pacific, CSX, Norfolk Southern, just to name a few of the Title I or Class A railroads here in the United States, they own and operate the rails. And so, interestingly enough, they usually maintain them poorly. And down here in the South, CSX is known as a joke, especially in the railroad community, that it's lucky if a CSX train makes it from point A to point B without derailing somewhere along the way. So it's not really that surprising that there would be a second derailment in Ohio, because I'm sure if I pull up CSX news, we will probably read of a derailment. Wait, hang on. Let's see, 15th Street crossing, CSX. Let me see if there's any derailment news, because usually on any given day you can pull up CSX and there is a derailment somewhere.
That's kind of sad.
It is sad. I don't know how these companies make profits with so many trains derailing. CSX derailments. So let me put this in. 2 days ago, 1 day ago. That's all Norfolk Southern stuff. We're looking for, like right here, February 14th of 2023, says CSX train derails in South Carolina. CSX freight derailment leaves block to Jacksonville, and that was in 2018. And on the 13th of February in 2023, wait, hang on, that's a, CSX train derailment in Norway. The train derailments happen a lot in the United States, and that's usually why news coverage, like, for example, with the one that blew up in East Palestine, was very late to the game, because for news companies, usually, the news of a train derailment is incredibly demure and very boring, because they derail. Usually nothing happens this large. The company goes out there, repairs the roadbed that they were riding on, maybe the tracks as well if they were damaged. They re-rail the train, and then it gets sent back on its way. So it's not really that wild. The only reason that you're hearing about a second train derailment in Ohio is because the first train derailment that happened was incredibly severe in terms of the damage that it's caused, and that's the only reason why we're hearing about a second one. So I did hear about it. But beyond that, the only, and this is what's interesting about the news changes the way people perceive things, because up until that East Palestine, Ohio derailment, everyone in the United States believes that every single train runs on time and never derails. But that's not the case. Trains are derailing all over the place all the time in the United States. Railroad safety is somewhat poor, and that was actually brought up. We can't get into the details of it because it becomes inherently political now. But back in last year, there was actually some strikes going on across the entire railroad industry by unions due to the low safety conditions of the railroads at this moment, which was put down. And now we're starting to see that the East Palestine railroad disaster has brought to attention how many trains are derailing across the entirety of the United States, or more specifically in the Ohio area. But with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well. No, it's not Ukraine war news, but considering that the question was there, I guess we'll try and answer it the best way we can. But with that, I hope that addresses that fairly. And also, by the way, the whole reason of me bringing up the nationalized rail ownership in the United Kingdom with privatized railway companies running on them versus the United States is that I guess you could say the blame for derailments, instead of falling on the government, more so fall on the companies, because the companies are the ones who own those railroads privately and are charged with maintaining them, since it's a part of their company and a part of their property ownership, instead of like in the United Kingdom, where if a train derailment occurs and it's a problem with the railroad tracks or the signalmen or something like that, that is a government issue. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, at least gives you an slight idea of how railroads operate in America and why that made news again. And so with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving back into Ukraine.
All right, and this last one goes to Jet Fusion, who says, does Ukraine still have those drones, or are they all gone now?
And which drones are they talking about in particular?
I'm not sure, but Ukraine typically uses the Bayraktar and occasionally the Switchblade, I think.
There are a lot of drones. Sadly, we're going to have to get another question, because there are about every single kind of drone you can imagine in the world right now is in Ukraine in one form or another. So sadly, I don't know which ones they have either failed to receive or not, because there's just so many of them. So with that, let's get one more question and make sure to answer this one, and then we'll be on to the rest of the news.
All right, and this one goes to Mad Machine, who says, when do you think that the orcs will start using T-34 tanks reinforced with Flex Seal?
Phil Swift out there. Hi guys, Phil Swift here with the brand new Flex Tank. See how he welded the armor with Flex Tank? But I would actually say it may not be that long. And funnily enough, man, I don't even say this ironically. Did you know that in the 80s, it was actually common to know that East German armored divisions were equipped with T-34-85s in the 1980s?
Really?
Yes. Let me pull that up. East German T-34-85s. Let me see if I can find a picture that was from the 80s or so. So let's see here. This one right here is a disguised, interestingly enough, East German Leopard. Well, actually, an East German T-34 that is disguised to look like a Leopard. A Leopard 1 tank from West Germany. That is inherently a war crime, and pretty crazy to see there is a picture of a literal war crime sitting right there. Because if East Germany had gone to war and used this tank the way it looks, they probably would have said they would have said it's a war crime. It's impersonating the other force. But let me see if I can find y'all some other...
Now, just wait just a second. I got to call this out from the chat. Somebody said, now that's a lot of damage. We saw this orc in half. I mean, tank.
My God. Oh my God. Oh man. Let me see. Let's see. These are this has got to be like in the 50s, because there's no way that one's from the modern day, because they're also using Mosins. And by the late 80s, they did have AKs for the most part. But damn, I gotta try and find these, because I remember seeing a picture of one from the 80s, and I was like, no way. But what's sad is that it's really hard to differentiate them, because the Soviets the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact never developed like color film as well as the West did. So while you can clearly tell that a lot of things in the West in between like the 60s and the 50s or the 70s occurred at certain times just by the pictures being in black and white or in color, that never happened in the Soviet Union. A lot of the Soviet Union's pictures were taken in black and white almost all the way up until the dissolution of the Soviet Union itself. So let me see here. There's a T-30. Well, let me just type this in. How long did East Germany use T-34-85s? And of course, they're not frontline armored units. It was like reserve units and stuff like that. But let's see. The National Army GDR uses tanks until 1964, and the T-74. T-34-76. What the? Okay, hang on. We're not going to touch on that one because that's too much. The last 35 T-34-85 tanks with the 85mm guns remained in service with the East Germans until 1988. Literally 1 year before East Germany ceased to exist, T-34-85s were still in service. So technically, it's not that crazy to think, considering how long T-34-85 stayed in service with East Germany, that the Russians have some somewhere inside of Russia that they may actually pull out if desperate enough and try and use in reserve units inside of Ukraine. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. And with that, it's now time for us to finally get on back into the news. This question segment was actually really long. It lasted about 25 minutes or so, one of the longest we've ever had. But very interesting questions. And of course, I thank everyone for supporting tonight's fundraiser and getting it to $8,500. With that, it's now time for us to move into the northeastern area. And we haven't seen a lot of action up here in the past 24 hours. So let me flip up the timetable. There's the past 24 hours. Look at that. Nothing really happened. But we did get video clips, like for example, Sound of Satove, where we saw a massive strike on Russian forces, which left a little bit of a dent. And when I mean dent, I don't mean a dent in like a bunker or a house. I mean a dent in the landscape. Let's just watch this explosion. Oh.
Oh, blia.
Oh, crap. Dang it. The audio was muted. Hang on. Let me go back because the shockwave was loud. None. None. But anyways, when you see that Russian fortification being blown up, and it's very nice to see that the Ukrainians are doing some landscape sculpting. And so now we're moving on to the area of Chernopopivka, where we also saw a Russian tank burning in the area. Oh, it's that Chad music. We're going to have to mute that. When you see them dropping a grenade down there, when you see the drone pilot get a close-up and then fly away, we can see the grenade explode, and we can see the smoke from the fire now beginning. We can now see that fire reaching its apex as massive flames come out of the commander, driver's hatch, and also the front of the gun. For some reason, this reminds me of one of those sparkling birthday candles. And so with that, that's the end of the clip. But always good to see that another Russian tank has turned into a birthday candle, once again celebrating another day that the Ukrainian war has turned older, and also celebrating that they still have not defeated the Ukrainians, which is good. And with more tanks being burned like these, we can only assume that the war will not be won, by the Russians at least. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of the northeastern area and on down into the area of Bakhmut. Because, of course, the situation in Bakhmut has been incredibly tense. The battles are continuing ferociously, and the front lines are deceptive by these means. Because while the Russians are pushing towards the Bakhmutka River, which is not shocking considering that Ukrainian forces blew up the bridges crossing that river and have now retreated to the western side of the town, there's not much going on here. But we can see one interesting thing, though. Let me go over here. It looks like the Russians attempted to cross the canal and on the 4th and were pushed back on the 5th. Very interesting to know. While that isn't a massive movement, it appears that the Russians cannot ford even the tiniest of canals. This thing's only like 6 feet wide at its biggest, and they're not able to cross it without getting pushed back, so very interesting to see. But moving on from that and into our clips from Bakhmut, in the area of Krasnohora today, we saw the 3rd Assault Battalion in the area. And so here's the clip. When you see them inside of the BTR, We now hear the music playing, so we have to mute it. We see one of them getting a Red Bull, which gives you wings, and it looks like they'll be using that to give the Russians some wings. We can now see them wandering around, and it looks like he stayed frosty. So we're going to let the video continue. We can now see them hanging out. You know, when I originally saw that clip, Matthew, it just clicked with me right there. When I originally saw that clip, I actually thought that was a Ukrainian soldier having a lie down, and then I just realized it was a Russian soldier taking a nap.
So, I was wondering what the pause was for. Was that what you were doing?
Yes, I was thinking maybe he'll realize that that was not a Ukrainian soldier just, you know, kind of lying down. But anyways, we can see the trench battles continuing. We see one Ukrainian grabbing an RPG. We now see him moving around in the open. We now see him firing the RPG and backing up. And it looks like the video clip has gone black right there. And it looks like there's maybe nighttime footage of tracers flying overhead, but not a lot to be seen. So with that's the end of the clip. And interestingly enough, looks like the Russians are taking naps. It's been confirmed they are sleeping on the job. And I'm sure that Nutsack is not going to be happy about that. Nutsack is not happy about it. In fact, we actually were able to geolocate where Nutsack stood when he was saying that they're in the center of Bakhmut. You see, he was actually in the middle of Krasnohora, which is not Bakhmut. It's an entirely different village to the north. And so let me go to Krasnohora and let me show you all the exact building he was on. So actually it's in Pereskokiivka, but it kind of shows up as Krasnohora. He was on top of this building right here. And we actually were able to see that someone very well was able to geolocate exactly where Nutsack stood. So we can see Nutsack here, we can see the building he's on, it's highlighted in red, and you can see the railroad tracks in the background, and also the other nearby buildings that were highlighted down here, showing exactly where he stood. If only we had gotten this information when he was standing there, Nutsack could have been blown away, because I'm sure they would have had 10 drones flying out to where he was to get him. So with that, we actually got to know where he was when he said they were in the middle of Bakhmut. Nope, they weren't. They were on the outskirts. And speaking of which, he then went off that building and went back to his dark basement, wherever the hell this thing is. And he started talking about how if the Wagner unit wasn't in Ukraine, the Russians would be pushed all the way back to the border by tomorrow. And it sounds like we got a real patriot here, Matthew. He believes in the Russian army through and through, that they'll be beat before it's even over. So here's the clip, and we actually have a translation of him saying it. And see how I'm talking about, like, the dark basement, wherever the hell he is? Because look at this, man. It looks like he's being interrogated.
Yeah, really. Like, what if he is? Like, this is like an interrogation video and like in actuality.
Putin came in dressed up like Darth Vader. Where are those plans? And he's like, I don't know, Blade. I'm just a chef.
We'll get in front of the camera, Nutsack, and start talking. Start yapping.
I have put Neutrogena on my scalp. It makes it look like scrotum. Anyway, let's start the clip. If PMC Wagner retreats from Bakhmut right now, the whole front will collapse, блядь. And today, Wagner acts as cement, блядь. On one hand, we pull all Ukrainian grouping on ourselves. Grind it, destroying it, not allowing it to concentrate in other areas of the front. On the other, we're moving forward, and the rest must follow us. In order to at least somewhat save face and reputation, блядь. Plus, they also learn and understand that it can be done. It's very important to break the stereotype of can we or can we not. Yes, we can. If we can, you can too. Forward, guys. If Wagner PMC pulls back now, history will unfold the following way, блядь. The front will collapse to the Russian borders, perhaps even further. And generally, the situation will be unpleasant for all military formations protecting Russia's interest. For Wagner PMC, the story will be as such. Wagner retreated from Bakhmut, and the following statement will remain in history, блядь. A group of mercenaries led by Prigozhin convinced Putin of its necessity. Actually, we were summoned when it was difficult, but it will say convinced. After this, it positioned in Bakhmut and began drawing on itself and grinding the Ukrainian army. Subsequently, the group of mercenaries did not agree about money or greyhound puppies, I don't know. What the hell does that mean? Harems or something else. With state leadership, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Finance, or Luhansk People's Republic rapidly rolled back on the Spring Effect Accord. PMC Wagner jumped back in the 10th Ukrainian army on the left and right flanks and also in the center, блядь. Broke into LPR territory, swept away Luhansk, swept away Krasnodon, reached Russian territory. Army was forced to stabilize the front and the flanks collapsed, блядь. Next, Crimea falls, and I don't know, many other cataclysms. Thus today, PMC Wagner is self-cement. It's at the very top, блядь. It's stabilizing and not allowing the enemy to break through, блядь. If we pull back, we'll forever go into history as people who look like nutsack, блядь. Made the man step towards losing the war, блядь. And this is exactly the problem with shell hunger, блядь. It's not my opinion. Who am I to think about it? But regular fighters, exactly those with crooked hands, peeled nails, and crooked minds, shaggy unshaved beards, like peasants, they will come and say, "Boss, could it be possible that this story is being played somewhere deep in the Ministry of Defense, or perhaps even higher, блядь, in order to explain to the Russian people why we ended up in this trouble? What if they want to set us up and say we are villains, and that's why we aren't given ammo, блядь? Aren't giving weapons, aren't allowed to reinforce personnel, блядь, including the convicts." And that's the end of the clip, but as you can see right there, the nutsack believes that the entire war is leaning on his shoulders and the Wagner shoulders. And I find it funny that he's sitting here and saying that the Wagner is a step above the rest, yet he's pretty much saying right here they're weakening the Wagner by not allowing him to recruit prisoners. So it's kind of a contradiction of what he's saying, because I'm sure that prisoners don't make that great of a fighting force for many reasons, but still. We can see that Nutsack is getting very adamant that his Neutrogena formula on his scalp is what's keeping this entire front line from collapsing, although they're hardly moving at all. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on. Also, if any of y'all are wondering where in the world my Russian accent comes from, like what the inspiration of it is, because I saw someone who asked about that when I was doing it, it actually comes from a YouTuber called Life of Boris, who is not Russian. He's not Russian, but for some reason, like when I heard his voice, I was like, yes, that is stereotypical Russian accent. So I was like, I'm just going to make that one the accent, just in case y'all are ever wondering where that's from. He has a pretty cool channel, actually. I would recommend going over there and subscribing, since YouTube dropped him off the algorithms because they thought he was Russian, but I think he's like Estonian or something. So with that, we're now moving into the center of Bakhmut, where we saw what the inside of Bakhmut looks like today. We see them looking around, and of course, it's incredibly damaged, even in the city center. We see a van over there on fire and burning, and rubble and debris just strewn across the streets. And hardly a single building standing without some kind of damage. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, but giving you an idea of what the center of Bakhmut looks like while this battle goes on. And we actually saw some photos of the Atom Group in Bakhmut, who are helping to keep that part of Bakhmut Ukrainian controlled. We can see them standing here in front of a sign showing Donetsk up there, and also another thing, another direction, but it seems to be rusted out. But still, they're sitting there with their little NSV machine gun, and they are holding the line. An incredible unit, much like every other in the Bakhmut area, making sure to hold as best as possible. I see a lot of people actually saying that Life of Boris is very funny. Back in the day, he was actually a big deal on YouTube. A couple of years ago, he was like way up there in the algorithms. He was a great, funny channel, and I watched him a lot. I thought he was really funny. Funnily enough, I don't think he ever went to Russia, though. He went to, like, every Slavic country but Russia, which is really funny when you think about it. But, anyways.
So he takes the Russian accent kind of like FPS Russia did?
I don't think he does. I don't think he fakes it. I think that's his, like, real accent. It's just that from where he's from, it just sounds stereotypically Russian. But, you know, FPS Russia really did bamboozle everyone back in the early years of YouTube because everyone seriously thought he was a Russian living in America, and he was just an American living in America doing a Russian accent. So with that,
he fooled us good.
Yeah, he fooled everyone good until he got busted with bags of gas on him. It looked like he was running the cocaine gas factory. But anyway, so now moving on to the town of Khromovy, which is behind Bakhmut, where we saw some Chechen volunteers. Here we can see a picture of them holding up their flag. We can see it's a mix of the Chechen and Ukrainian flag with a pretty interesting little symbol in it. And we can also see this guy here with the Tokarev pistol, I believe. He's got his finger on the trigger. It appears that he did not get the trigger safety class, but nonetheless, I do like his enthusiasm, and it looks like we've got more Chechen volunteers fighting on the side of the Ukrainians, making sure to hold the line around the area. Great to know that the Ukrainians can count on the smart Chechens to help defend their country, and also defend largely, I guess you could say, anti-Russian sentiments, especially considering what happened to the Chechens back in the 90s and the 2000s. Moving on down into the southern flank, where we have our last bit of news directly inside of Bakhmut, we saw a Ukrainian soldier find a dud. And now, a lot of y'all are probably thinking, oh, wait a minute, he called another prisoner. No, sadly, it wasn't that dud. It was another kind of dud. It was an explosive dud. You see him looking into a battle. You hear gunfire and fights going on in the distance.
Авиабомба не сработала.
See them wandering on along down this little path.
Это стреляет. Вот она.
You now see the soldier
Герой,
reach
бля,
a large
как кабана
object.
завалил вроде. Сучка как...
Oh! Fab 500?
Oh. Nani?
Nani? Someone quick, get a hammer and hit it. Or, well, if it was a Russian, quick, get a stick and poke the bomb. You know, or something like that.
Сучка
But that thing's been there for a while because that thing's rusted over.
как ахнет.
Or the Russians, knowing Russians, they probably loaded it onto the plane in that condition.
Я думаю, шлем слетит.
But that's the end of the clip, and you can see right there that they passed a dud. And so with that, we're now going to be moving behind Bakhmut, where we also saw someone giving us a close-up look at the Russian Siegfried line that is somewhere near the area of Popasna.
Только что мы проехали указатель 50 километров до границы с Украиной. Вот такие оборонительные сооружения мы здесь видим. Сейчас я подойду чуть ближе.
We can see them looking at the tank traps. You can see that they go on well into the horizon.
Вот.
These are also called dragon's teeth. I just call them the pyramids.
И уходит в горизонт. Рядом вырыты вот такие траншеи.
And then we can see the open space in between the dragon's teeth and this large berm here that I believe is part of an anti-tank trench. And yes, that is the anti-tank trench. You can see it right there. When you hear a vehicle passing, probably some Russian soldiers driving by going, "Bliet, what is this woman looking at for, bliet?" But it looks like she just showed us the entire Siegfried line. It's not even really like a lot of trench works, at least in this part of it. It's just an anti-tank moat and some dragon's teeth, which should actually be a little easy to get through if you can blow up the dragon's teeth in some small areas and also fill in with engineering vehicles the moat, which shouldn't be that difficult. You could just start sending vehicles right across it without that much of a problem. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from the area of Popasna and moving on down into the area of Ozarenivka, where we saw some anti-tank mines blowing up. And much like the shark said in Jaws, which it didn't, blow up. So here's the clip.
Man, I don't even want to go back to that again.
Man, it was the man. It was the man. A cool intro, also. Very cool. I'm telling you, man, I don't know what it is tonight, man, but I feel like I'm dying over here from hyperglycemia. I don't know what's caused this. But when you see all the anti-tank mines right down there, in typical Russian fashion, we are about to see the Ukrainians drop a bomblet on top of them right there. And there it goes gently, gently. Oh my god. Why in the world is it that anti-tank mines, when they blow up, they look stronger than a nuclear bomb? I don't know what it is with the explosive filler in these things, but these explosions are impressive. So now you see the crater that's been caused by those anti-tank mines. And like Dakota the Bear said, big boom, bleed. Not big crater though, but big boom. And so with it, they see in the clip, but very nice to see, that this got blown up. And so with that, we're now moving out of the area of Bakhmut altogether, and moving on down into the area of Donetsk. We didn't see any frontline activity here today, but in Avdiivka, we saw another destroyed column outside the town. Showing, ... that the Russians have failed another assault, and we can see these things are smoking and still fresh. Quite a large amount of them, once again, all dying in a cluster. Call the Russians a truffle because they are filled with clusters of nuts. And the Russians have to be nuts to continue assaults like these. They're absolutely stupid. But still, another 5 BMPs lost and another main battle tank. Not a bad day near Avdiivka. Moving on down into the area of Marinka, Matthew actually got a laugh out of that joke. It must have been actually a little clever. We actually got a video clip from Marinka today from an infantryman on the ground. And so, without further ado, here's the clip.
Мар'янка, 5 березня. Одні руїни. Нічого живого немає.
And of course, the destruction is terrible. We've seen this from the air before, and now we can see what it looks like from the ground, and every single building has been reduced to rubble. We're now going to be moving out of the Marinka area and on down to Volodar, because if y'all thought we were even getting close to the end of the news tonight, y'all were sorely mistaken, because now we have to go through everything that happened in Volodar. Of course, no frontline changes occurred, but I was happy to see today that the devil came under fire.
Somebody just asked about that, literally. Like, their question just got answered on perfect time.
Yeah, the devil almost got blown up today. He arrived in Volodar, well, actually Mikilske, to try and take a look at what was going on around there and, you know, do a little photo op. And we saw him flinch. He's such a loud-talking, loud mouth to show up and then literally crawl onto the floor with an artillery shell landing nearby. Look how nervous he looks right here. He's loud and boisterous self that he is on his show or anywhere else. He's leaning on the wall. He looks scared, and then he gets even more scared here in a second. And look at that. Little Solovyv, the devil. He went crawling to the floor in fear, and the camera panned off him. So we didn't get to see him go lower, but as the camera frame moved away, you could see he was clearly getting lower and lower to the ground as the camera panned off of him. And I feel like that was a deliberate choice because they didn't want to show Solovyv cracking under the pressure. As the camera looks into the bay, we can see the smoke coming from the shell right outside. And look at that. The bravest man in Russia, the biggest loudmouth there ever was, according to his very own show, he flinched. He actually flinched. So I wonder if he's going to go back to Russia and be his loudmouth self, now that we've seen a little clip of him actually freaking out. And you know, and some people are going to be saying here in a second, wouldn't you freak out if you were in a similar situation? Oh, hell yeah, and I'm not going to let y'all think that I wouldn't. I would. Because having an artillery shell blow up right near to you, that's going to be scary for anyone. But this guy, he sits there and makes it sound like the Russians are supposed to drink piss and vinegar every day. They're supposed to recycle dead bodies and eat them like some kind of a corpse starch or something like that. And this guy is as crazy as it gets in terms of what he says. And it's funny to see that he folded when an artillery shell landed near him. None of the crew around him reacted like that, but he went to the floor. To the literal
Why are they putting him
floor.
on the front lines like that, though? Like, is he volunteering to go there, I wonder, or is he being put out there to, like, maybe kill him?
I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe the government's gotten tired of him and they're trying to see about having him martyred. I don't really know. But still, I find it hilarious. And so with that, we're moving on from that clip and on into the next bit of news, where we saw the Russians get hit near Volodar by a drone bomblet. 2 of them, as a matter of fact. 1 bomblet, 2 Russians. And of course, the same song that we've heard a million times, so we have to mute it. When you see them running up to the destroyed BTR, the bomblet still falling, explodes right behind him. And when you see that the one furthest away from the bomblet got wounded, and his comrade, he looks like he got wounded too, bleed. And so that's the end of clip. But you can see, Russians still don't do well near Volodar, bleed. Well, now moving in into next clip near Pavlivka, where we saw the 72nd Brigade destroy Russian tank, bleed. And so let's go to Twitter. Let me mute that. When you see the tank smoking in distance, it was T-80. Best tank Russians have at this point, блядь. Suka. It's roasting quite nicely, like chestnuts on rope and fire. Someone's about to say, man, could you stop doing the Russian voice? Oh, turret toss. I didn't see the turret. It was in the middle of the cloud.
Blyat.
But we hit turret toss, блядь. Call this thing Sputnik because Yuri Gagarin is in that bitch. But still, everything is roasting. Claude said Boris is more funny. I'll admit Boris is a pretty funny guy. He gets to be more funny than me because he gets to think about his jokes because they're videos, they're not streams. But still, I will admit he's way funnier. But look at that. Roasting. So nicely. And now we can see them carrying off one of them on stretcher, which lets us know crew did not do well. So that is the outro from 72nd Brigade, or 72nd Brigada, and very nice to see that they were able to take out a Russian tank, bleed. So that we're moving on to next clip, where we saw the 68th Jaeger Division destroy tank, bleed. When you see a drone bomb fall on it, when you see it explode, and with force of 100 alcoholic Russians, it blows open the top, trying to get into that sweet, succulent alcohol on the inside, catching at the light. So with that, we can see another Russian tank destroyed. Very nice, and credit to the 68th Jaeger for being able to do it. We're now moving on to our last clip from Volodar, where we saw some troops in Volodar open fire on Russian forces as they advanced. And Jethro Bradley just asked for Rodney. And everyone's saying they want Rodney. Are you kidding me? Rodney was hated the last time he was on here. We'll think about it. But I gotta tell y'all, last time...
Oh, I get no respect out here. My mother something. I don't know something, but the joke went something about my mother.
I gotta tell you, Matt, the last time Rodney was on here, oh, man, oh, he got no respect, I tell you what, man. When I was a kid growing up, my toys in the bathtub with a radio and a toaster. And it got worse from there. My mother never loved me as a kid. She wouldn't breastfeed me. She said she liked me as a friend. Oh, man, and if you thought that was bad, wait until you see my dad. He would beat me until he couldn't recognize me because he said my face was too ugly. Oh, man, and that was just a start.
Yeah, that's a hell of a joke.
I just came up with that one on the spot, so that one was not his.
I was about to say.
But when you see some Ukrainian soldiers in the basement here in Volodar with their guns, when you see one guy pose for the camera, and then it actually pauses, he had enough force behind that signal to actually sit there and stop the frame. Now see them firing out of the windows in auto. I don't know why people say full auto, like there's a different kind of auto, you know? Like there's semi-automatic.
Fully semi-automatic?
Yeah, there's semi-automatic and there's automatic. That's it. And now the camera's going black. We can see someone readjust the camera in a second as they're firing the PKP out the window in a burst. They actually have 2 PKPs at this window. So we're looking at some double machine gun action out of the same opening in this building. A Gator said he loves all the accents.
Oh man, a lot of people don't. Oh man, don't even get me started. I get no respect around here. Whenever I do these voices, people are going, "Hey, cut it out, will you?" And I'm always going, "Oh man, if only you knew the heaviness I wake up with every day." Oh,
Anyways, you can see them still firing the machine gun out of the window, and that's the end of the clip. But once again, giving you an idea of what Bakhmut's looking like today. And so with that, we're moving on into the southern front in general. We only got one clip of news where we saw a Varta armored car get hit today by an explosive, and it survived. Pat MC. Everyone's asking for voices tonight. This is crazy. We usually don't have this many requests for different kinds of voices. Someone actually just asked for Beavis and Butthead. Though when you see the Varta here, the crater under it from the explosion of the anti-tank weapon. When you see the inside of the Varta untouched, but the outside has been messed up. Tire completely blown off. Front looks mangled. Oh man, you know what? Since someone asked for it, I guess we could do it.
Hey, look, Bucket. I guess they're gonna need TV for the bunghole.
Something like that. But anyways. So Margaret Hensley said, I miss David Attenborough. Y'all are asking for everything. Good lord. Like the list is endless. It made me realize how many voices we've done on here. But anyways, that's the end of that clip, and very nice to see that Varta survived that anti-tank mine, and the crew inside was perfectly alright. So with that is actually all of the news from around Ukraine we had today. And so it's now time for us to move up to Kyiv for the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And I'm going to have to start this one off with a caveat tonight. I haven't been able to check the length. Let me check the length. It's 4 minutes and 41 seconds. I'm going to play it starting now, but I'm going to be off trying to find food so I don't drop from hyperglycemia here in a minute. So I might not be back by the time this ends. So Matthew, if I'm not, just make sure to carry it until I am. So without further ado, here's the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні завершується перший тиждень нової весни. І важливо зробити кілька змістовних наголосів на тому, що саме вдалося зробити за цей тиждень, зробити для України. Відбулася масштабна конференція за участі багатьох наших партнерів, правників України, всієї Європи, всього світу. United for Justice – об'єднані заради справедливості. Крок за кроком ми йдемо до того, щоб забезпечити повну відповідальність держави-терориста за скоєне проти нашої держави, проти наших людей. Мають бути покарані всі російські вбивці, кожен організатор цієї агресії, усі, хто будь-яким чином забезпечує війну проти нашої держави і терор проти наших людей. І це не просто якась мрія про справедливість, це робота, яка вже ведеться. Це домовленості, яких ми вже досягаємо. Це інституції, які вже працюють і будуть працювати ще активніше заради відновлення справедливості, заради покарання винних в агресії. Світ достатньо сильний, щоб покарати Росію за війну, і ми дамо світу достатньо сміливість та достатній інструментарій, щоб покарання відбулося. Щотижня додається впевненості у цьому. І я дякую всім нашим партнерам, які допомагають будувати мережу юридичної взаємодії, щоб відповідні вироки все ж прозвучали і були реалізовані. Другий важливий результат цього тижня – це енергетика, це початок підготовки до наступного опалювального сезону. Вже зараз ми опрацьовуємо всі сценарії і зробимо все, щоб підійти до наступної зими готовими до будь-якої загрози. За півроку наші енергетики, урядовці, сектор безпеки і оборони та усі, хто залучений до виконання відповідних завдань, мають зробити цілком конкретні речі. Посилити захист енергооб'єктів, відновити ту інфраструктуру, яка була зруйнована російськими ударами за минулі півроку, дати більше можливостей нашим людям в рамках проєкту децентралізації енергосистеми, щоб люди могли на своїй приватній території, на своїх приватних об'єктах генерувати і постачати електрику. Це велика робота, вона вже почалась. Третій результат, який хотілося б відзначити – міжнародні відносини. Поновлено контакти на найвищому рівні з Бразилією, говорив з новим президентом Швейцарії, а ще Нідерланди, Латвія, Естонія, Європарламент та інші структури Євросоюзу. З усіма ними за тиждень є нові домовленості, новий рух до наших спільних цілей, новий потенціал співпраці. І, звичайно, цей тиждень, черговий тиждень, коли наші воїни, та кожна, хто допомагає захищати державу, зробили українську перемогу ще ближчою. Відбивали штурми, знищували окупанта, підривали ворожі позиції і логістику, берегли наші кордони і міста. І я дякую кожному і кожній, хто зараз в бою. Дякую всім, чиє життя дає порятунок життя України. Особливо відзначую сьогодні за хоробрість, міцність та незламність воїнів, які б'ються на Донбасі. Одна з найтяжчих битв, болісна і важка. 93-я окрема механізована бригада «Холодний Яр», 77-ма окрема аеромобільна бригада, 56-та окрема мотопіхотна бригада, 5-й окремий штурмовий полк, а ще наші нацгвардійці, прикордонники, 3-я бригада оперативного призначення Нацгвардії, Донецький, Луганський, Краматорський прикордонні загони і зведені загони Дозор, Волинь, Чернігів. Дякую, хлопці. Дякую усім армійцям, гвардійцям, прикордонникам, які захищають нашу державу на Бахмутському, Вугледарському, Авдіївському, Сіверському, Сватівському, Лиманському та Запорізькому напрямках. Дякую і кожному волонтеру, який допомагає нашим хлопцям зберігати стійкість. Дякую всім нашим лікарям, медичним сестричкам, які рятують життя і здоров'я наших бійців. Вже готуємо і новий тиждень, будуть нові результати для України. Вистоїмо, виженемо окупанта, покараємо їх. Україна переможе. Слава Україні!
And so with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky, and that wraps up our Day 375 news summary and the news on the Sunday night fundraiser. And I have to say, it is absolutely unbelievable to think that we made it so far in this fundraiser. After such an impressive fundraiser last Friday, we reached $64,000. Well, really more like $64.5 thousand last Friday. This Sunday, we have reached $8.6 thousand. An absolutely impressive amount, and I've got to thank you all so much once again for donating to help save the children. Can we get a yeehaw on that one, Matthew? Yeehaw! Yeah!
It came through.
It came through. And also, do we have any top donors we would like to recognize that have thrown in a donation in between now and the last time that we haven't been able to call out?
All right. So actually, believe it or not, we actually don't have any more top donors for the night, but we have reached $8.6 thousand on the fundraiser of a $5,000 goal, which is absolutely tremendous. It seems like these days the standard is always to smash the goal, whatever it is. If it's 5,000, we're always above it. Even if it's 7.5 thousand, we're always above it. But I got to say, very, very impressive, and thank you all once again.
And also, to answer a couple of things from the live chat real quick, because we're about to be moving into the polls and then right into the live chat. Let's see, Bobby Karolfa said, what did you get us to eat? Great question. So I went upstairs, I stuffed my mouth with 2 slices of Swiss cheese, like the Sargento kind. You know, if you're ever wondering, like, what does it actually taste like? It's the Sargento brand if you're in America.
Name brand stuff.
Yeah, and that's it. Then there was a biscuit left over from, and I hate to say this, Matthew, I got that biscuit, but there was a biscuit left over from when my mom made homemade biscuits. They're absolutely delicious. I went and lathered the thing with gravy, then threw it in the microwave. And I also have this little pound cake and this these little honey mustard like pretzel stick things. I haven't been able to eat any of them because I was just trying to get them all, and then I got down here just in time for Zelensky's speech to end. So that's what we got. So I would have to say, and also another thing, I actually saw someone, Matthew, and some people always think, some people wonder, why in the world do some people get booted and they're not pro-Russian bots? That's because, and I'm going to answer this because this is a good example, a good case study right here. David L., like, you know, you can say, like, we're fine if you're not a big fan of voice impressions because a decent amount of people aren't. Like, half of the channel isn't. And when people say, I'm not really a big fan, maybe do that a little less, we're like, okay, we'll do it less. But when someone comes in like David L. and says the impersonations are awful, that's just trying to be rude for the hell of it. You know, you could say I'm not really into it and we would just take that as it is. But being rude like that usually is a step in the wrong direction, and then people go usually psychotic from there. So just wanting to get that out of the way, just in case if people are wondering, why does that happen sometimes? Well, if you come in rude like that, that might happen. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, just in case anyone had a question, because I actually saw someone in our comment section who said, they ban people who aren't Russian bots sometimes. We do, because they're rude. And we're running a show. This is like I guess a stage show. And if you sit there and heckle someone in the audience, the security will come and kick you out. It's kind of the same thing. But with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And I think we're on into the polls.
All right, and we're on to the polls. So, up first, we have the first one, which says the U.S. says it is conducting evaluative training with the Ukrainians on F-16s. And what are your thoughts? It looks like 52% think that the F-16s are secretly approved already. 21% said the U.S. is exercising due diligence. 18% said the U.S. is conducting stalling tactics. And 9% said unsure. And I'm going to go with the first option that 18% went with. I think the U.S. is simply stalling. We know at this point that the jets would be tremendously helpful to Ukraine. However, the U.S. is making the argument that if we were to send them right now, that would use up all the available funds that we have. What was that, Enforcer?
Nothing. I'm just secretly trying to get open this little wrapper over here. So thanks for giving it away.
But I thought you said something. But anyways, I think the U.S. is making the argument that if we send F-16s right now, we'll use up all the available funds that are in the Ukrainian, I guess, fund. I don't know where I was trying to go with that, but that's what I'm thinking. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say the F-16s. I mean, I don't really know where to go with this, though, because this is one of those statements that doesn't really seem logical to me, kind of like the Abrams statements that happened a while ago. Like, think about it. They said Abrams cannot be supported on Ukrainian bridges. We're now sending 30 of them. 31 of them, actually. Why the hell would they say that? It didn't even make any logical sense when they said that originally. So I would say with the F-16, it doesn't make a lot of sense when the government says, we don't want to exhaust the funds for Ukraine, because from what I've seen, the amount of funds available to Ukraine or whatever we're willing to give, there seems to be really no limit on it. So why the hell is there an imaginary limit now? And what is the limit? Like, what is the government actually looking at fiscally that is the limit to the support we give over a period of time to Ukraine? Because they've never given us a number on that. So I feel like that is a little odd. And I see a lot of people, and this is a great point, that Trister, who threw in $500 tonight, brought up weeks ago. The F-18 is better and more cost-effective for what the Ukrainians need. It's more suited to what the Ukrainians would most likely require. So I would say the argument shouldn't really be about F-16s anymore, more so about F-18s. But still moving on from that, is really about Western aircraft in general. And I would say that they should send them. I don't know where the hell the budgetary concerns came out of, because there never have been any from what I can see. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And also, Matthew, I'm going to plug this for you. Red 1967 said, where is Enforcer's Twitter? Go down to the link in the description below, and there is a link to the Twitter right there. But Matthew, I was just wondering, and also this is going to be an excuse for me to try and make sure I don't die of hyperglycemia, because I'm still dying of it over here. Why do you think the F-16 is better than the F-18? Why are you so adamant for that specific aircraft instead of others that the West could give?
Well, I'm actually not adamant just for the F-16. I'm adamant for any American jet that we can send. Basically, try to maximize the funds that we have available to allocate to Ukraine. So if the F-16s are slightly more affordable than an F-18 and it works almost the same, I would say send the F-16. But I have seen the arguments from Trister, like you mentioned, saying that the F-18 is a little bit more robust. And if it's about the same cost, I would say send that one instead. But I doubt it is. But I don't know for certain.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm sorry, y'all. I've never had this happen before. I only ate one meal today, and I feel like I'm dying. So I'm sorry about that. But interesting points, Matthew, for sure. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And our next poll says, many experts say that the American fighter jets are key to victory in this war. And what are your thoughts? It looks like 53% said, it's important, but not key. 36% said American jets are key to victory. 7% said unsure. And 4% said no, they aren't very important. And I personally think that they are the key to victory. I saw a really good argument by a lieutenant general, I believe it was, from the Air Force that's retired now. He believes that they would be enough to change the war in Ukraine's favor tremendously, not just slightly, but a whole bunch, which would allow Ukraine to decisively win much faster than they would without. And that was on the Twitter as well today, if y'all follow us. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that aircraft are decisive to winning the war in Ukraine. Air power is one of the determining factors of how wars unfold in the modern world. And there's a dual factor to it. It's not just aircraft alone. Strong air defenses can do as good a job as protecting airspace as an aircraft can. But right now, while the Ukrainians have incredibly strong air defenses, they do not have an incredibly strong air force. And while the Russians have incredibly strong air defense, their air power isn't strong enough or has the ability to overpower Ukraine's ground air defenses. So there is a little bit of a stalemate right now, and we can tip that stalemate into Ukraine's favor in the air by allowing them to send F-18s, F-16s, or any other similar Western aircraft. So I do think that sending aircraft is the next step in ensuring Ukrainian superiority on the battlefield and ensuring that they are able to turn the tide of the war a lot faster and a lot more effectively than the Russians could ever react to. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Also, I see that now I said I only ate 1 meal. Everyone's like, Enforcer, you shouldn't do that. Due to our sleep schedule, Matthew and me miss breakfast for sure. And sometimes, like on the weekends, I miss lunch and breakfast. So I only end up eating supper. And then I just don't eat. So that's why the eating schedule is off. We're always dealing with hyperglycemia about at this point because we've eaten so little. We start shaking and stuff. And also we start, Matthew has a real big issue with that. I don't as much as he does. So during that speech, and the speech has gotten freaking shorter so we can hardly do it anymore. We used to be able to get up and go to the restroom and go eat and have snacks or something like that. So that way we could power through the other hour and a half of it. But now Zelensky's speeches went from 7 minutes to 3 for the most part. So we never have time to get up and go get a snack or anything for the most part. We maybe have time to go up and get it to the restroom, but then we just have to starve through the rest of the stream. Then we go upstairs and there's this ritual that Matthew and me have where we go to the fridge and we just empty that thing and we just start eating everything out of the fridge after the end of a stream. Both of us do. So it's a communal eating thing after the whole stream. But still, I hope that shares with you all some behind the scenes of why I'm starving and how our usual day works. And Tom Exman said, not good, Andrew. And yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all. It's not healthy. But I do it for the stream, and I do it for the news, and I do it for Ukraine. And so with that, we are on to the next poll.
All right, and the next poll says Scholz, who is the Chancellor of Germany, says China made assurances to him that they won't send weapons to Russia, and what are your thoughts? And I have to admit, before I go over the results, I was kind of shocked to hear this. And obviously, I had my doubts. It looks like 53% said Scholz is being misled, 23% said maybe it's credible, 10% said it's probably credible, and 14% said I had no idea. And if I remember correctly, I believe Putin made Scholz an assurance that he would not invade Ukraine before the Ukraine war broke out. But I don't remember for certain if that was the case, but I think it was. I'm going to go with Scholz as being misled. I don't think we have any reason to trust Xi and that he's telling the truth on this. China is still upset with Russia that they leaked out the information about a potential arms deal happening, but we're not sure yet if that's going to completely soil the relationship, although I think it probably will. But Enforcer, what say you?
Who said that again, Matthew, about the Chinese assuring them about something? Schultz! Oh man, the devil. He always loves to say that name. Every time he could throw that down on his show. The Russians would be sitting there, man, people are starving in the street in Moscow. Looks like we've run out of wheat. And he'll just come out of the corner, Schultz! Schultz! he's obsessed with that word. But anyways, for some reason, Schultz is now popping up on our channel, so I don't know if we're going to start doing that too. Call him out. Call him out. But moving on. What was that laugh? You went,
I was wanting to say something else, but I held back. That's what that was.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. That makes a good deal of sense. But anyways, the Chinese are lying to everybody because the Chinese say, Russia, we're pissed off at you because you told everyone what we're going to do with you. And then they go and tell the Germans at the same time, we promise y'all, pretty promise, pinky promise, we're never going to send weapons to the Russians. They're lying to everyone. We don't know. I don't know what the truth is anymore because they're lying to just about everyone. I would feel like the truth is they're probably sending weapons to Russia or they're planning on it. And now they're lying to the Germans so that way we get blindsided when Chinese weapons show up in Ukraine. Because if they're lying to Germany after it became clear from their statements to Russia that they did plan on sending them weapons, I wouldn't believe them. So with that, I hope that does answer that, in my opinion, fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And I saw Fuyuma put something very, very helpful in the chat. He said the F-16 equals 8 million euros apiece, while the F-18 equals 90 million euros apiece. And Enforcer, before I comment on that, can you back that up?
I think he may be talking about having to make F-18s brand new. But let's see how expensive are American aircraft? Let's see here. 10 most expensive military aircraft. We don't want that. We don't want that either. Holy moly, an F-22 is more than a C-17 Globemaster? Dang.
That's not shocking. F-22 is a money pit.
Yeah, it's a good money pit, but that is way too much. Like, I don't want to say that because that's how we have air superiority, but that is incredibly expensive. Let's see here. How much does it cost to fly an aircraft? The F-18 Super Hornet costs $3,000 more per hour to fly than an F-16. So an F-16 is more affordable in that short-term perspective right there. At least in terms of...
Well, in that case, then I would say definitely send the F-16 instead of the F-18. And if over time the F-16's landing gear gets, in disrepair because of rough runways, just simply replace it. It'd probably be a whole lot cheaper than sending F-18s.
Well, there's a small problem, Matthew, with that. I hate to say it, but quite a small problem. Like, for example, let's look at Melitopol down here. So this is typical Russian runway, or Soviet-era runway, because the Ukrainians, took these on later. This is its typical length. And you can see that they were able to land entire Ilyushin 76s on runways that big. And if we take a ruler out, and let me see if I can, let's measure the distance. The typical Soviet-era military runway is only about 1.5 miles long. So let's go over to the United States, and let's go to Shreveport, Louisiana, to Barksdale Air Force Base, and let's measure out how long the runway is here. So measure distance, and we go all the way down to here, and a normal American runway, like for example, just to compare the one at Melitopol to the one at Barksdale, the one at Melitopol is 1.5 miles long. The one in Barksdale Air Force Base at Shreveport is 2.25 miles long. So it's nearly another 3/4 of a mile longer than its Soviet counterparts. And it doesn't really have to do with the coarseness of the runway. It has to deal with the length of the runway, because an aircraft has a minimum amount of time, well, I guess you could say landing distance it needs. And the F-16's landing distance is usually so long, unless if you were to slam it into the runway, which therein lies the issue, that it would extend beyond those runways and go slamming into the ground off the runway, which would completely destroy the aircraft after its first flight. So to stop that from happening, you would have to slam the F-16 down onto the runway, and its landing gear are not designed for that kind of landing, a rough landing like that. So it'll shear the landing gear off the first attempt to try and land it on the length of that runway. So either way, the F-16 gets screwed, from what I understand, because either you have to land on the runway so hard the landing gear break and the aircraft is critically damaged, or you try and land it normally and it overshoots the runway and then it goes tumbling into the grass and then the airframe is destroyed anyways. That is unlike the F-18. The F-18 is designed to land on aircraft carriers, and landing on aircraft carriers requires a lot of, I guess you could say, stress to be taken on by the landing gear, so the landing gear is designed where it can take it. So an F-18 can land on a short runway like the ones you'll find in Ukraine, but the F-16 isn't designed for that. It's designed for a normal Air Force runway. So that is more so of the issue. So while it may be cheaper to fly an F-16 per hour is going to be a lot more expensive when you have to replace the airframe every single time it lands, because there's really no way to land them well.
Huh. Interesting. I wonder why America is considering training them on them then.
Probably because we actually planned on seeing them. So I'm saying this with a little bit of a caveat, because I think there is one airfield, at least I know of, in Ukraine that may have long enough runways, which is the Boryspil Airport. So let me check, because these runways look significantly long. So let's check them.
And Colleen said modify the landing gear. I'm not sure if that's possible, but that's definitely a good idea. Pretty straightforward idea too. That's like the simple solutions sometimes are the best, and that's probably one of them.
Yeah, that might be an issue. That might be a fix. The runway at the Boryspil International Airport is 2.58 miles long. So it is long enough that you could put an F-16 at this airfield. But then again, there is also another problem, because there is no other place you can send the F-16. So if the Russians, for some reason, start landing successful missile strikes and taking out F-16s at Boryspil, it's not like the Ukrainians can go, we're relocating them to another airfield, because there's almost no other airfields that can support an F-16 due to its runway length. So with that, there's a little bit of a catch there, but that's how I understand it, because some people say it's actually the coarseness of the runways. I don't really understand that, and I still don't understand it, because I was just thinking about this, and if anyone can explain this to me, I would be more than happy to hear it. The F-16s, from what I understand, F-16 landing on highway. F-16 fighter jet lands on a highway in Taiwan. F-16 emergency landing at Riyadh in 2019. U.S. Air Force jets, those are A-10s though. Let's see, Taiwan was able to land F-16s on a highway, and I would assume that highways are about as coarse as a tarmac can get to land an aircraft on it. So it doesn't make any sense to me, on top of that, when there are Air National Guards operating out of international airports in the United States and around the world that are able to take off from normal commercial runways and land on them, and they require no special kind of asphalt to do that. And then those exact same commercial airliners that they're sharing that airport with will take off from, say, Atlanta, Georgia, and fly all the way to Boryspil and land there, and they never run into an issue with the coarseness of the runway's tarmac. So I don't really know if that is an issue or not. And Alan said, dude, I think you're wrong. Well, please let me know how I am, because that's
Yes,
that's what I'm saying. Like it's fine if I am wrong, but I need to know how or why. So please share with us why. But still, I hope that addresses that the best we can, at least my apprehensions about those claims. But with that, also certain death said, highways are thousands of miles long, so, so yeah, but they're not straight. They're not perfectly straight. You have to find a perfectly straight span out highway to be able to land them like that. But anyways, I hope that does address that, for at least the best we can, in my opinion, off of what I know. And with that, we're moving on to the next one.
And also, one last thing before we move on to the next poll. I saw Michael and also Casey say that modifying the gear on an F-16 is not feasible. And let's see, Michael says it's kind of central to the body design. And I think, if I remember correctly, the front landing gear is built into the air intake, like right underneath it, to avoid kicking up debris and, accidentally kicking it into the air intake, which would cause, obviously, a problem with the engine. So maybe it's not possible. Because it's already kind of a strange design with the landing gear anyway.
Let's see. So that may be the case. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. I was trying to figure out why my phone blew up right then. For some reason, all the notifications from Twitter just came in at one single moment. And I was like, what the hell's happening over here? I was like, did we just blow up and go viral? But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well about the F-16, at least the best I know. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says, Ukraine says negotiations to take back the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant are unsuccessful, and what are your thoughts? 86% said, I'm not surprised about that, 10% said unsure, and 4% said, I am surprised about it. And I have to admit, I'm kind of surprised for this reason. I'm surprised that Ukraine was negotiating with the Russians whatsoever. I didn't think that was happening, but apparently they were. And not shockingly, the Russians didn't give an inch, and they're not going to give up their nuclear shield. and give back the nuclear power plant to Ukraine, because that would not benefit the Russians in any way whatsoever, and the Russians don't care about it being dangerous, because that's just the way they are. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that's pretty. I gotta say this. That's pretty funny to hear that they were in negotiations to try and give it back to the Ukrainians, because from a Russian perspective, why? Also, real quick, Matty, I have to do this. Bobby, I got a story to tell you. So now that I got that out of the way, and I'll tell you about that after stream, Matthew, why I had to do that, but I had to do it. To get to the Enerhdar power plant, I don't know why in the world anyone ever thought it would be smart to ask them for it back. Obviously, they're never going to give it back. They're going to have to take the thing back if they want it. So that's kind of weird. I didn't know they were doing that, and I'm not surprised at all that they weren't able to get it back. So with that, I hope that does address the poll fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and it's now time to jump into our multiple live chat questions. We have a whole bunch of really good ones tonight, and of course, no super chats, so it's a open season, as you could say. But up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream: JP's RCs, Rumpelstiltskin, Cfay, Mark Hodges, and also Cliff Simonson. They said the Morse code says, "Who lives in a base down in Melitopol? Dying Russians. Hundreds are flying away from the blast. Burning Russians. Slav Ukraine."
Can you copy that real quick, Matthew, and put it in the live chat so that way I could read it off the way it's right on?
Is that SpongeBob or something?
Yes. So please put it
in. Oh, it sounded familiar.
Yeah, please put it in the chat. I'll try and read it off the right way. Oh, who lives in a base down in Melitopol? Dying Russians. Hundreds are flying away from the blast. Burning Russians. That's the sound of money falling out. Y'all got it correct. That is the Morse code message for the night, and I hope y'all enjoyed that one fairly well. Matthew said, I forgot to communicate that with you, Matthew, at the beginning of the stream, that was supposed to be the SpongeBob SquarePants song. So that's my fault. Sorry about that. But I had to make sure to give it proper justice, because that's what it was supposed to be, is the SpongeBob SquarePants thing. And I thought it was pretty smart, but that's just me. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Thank you to the anonymous donor that just threw in $100 to save the children. And with that, you know what we're about to do, Matthew. We're on to the next one, but thank you all for deciphering the Morse code message.
Yes, indeed. And also, shout out to Super Bunker 9000. I saw NAFO coming in strong with that $50 donation to the fundraiser, and big thanks to you as well, Super Bunker, for that support to the fundraiser. Save the children tonight. So, let's see here. Just checking. Also, thank you, Alan. You're an awesome co-host. I appreciate it. But with that being said, we're on to our next question, which goes to Georgia Lake, who says, Enforcer Matt, will they be able to bring the children back from Russia?
I don't know. That's something that we haven't really been able to hear a lot about. They get abducted, they get brought into Russia, spread out across the entirety of the nation. So I don't know if they will be able to get them back or not. So with that, I hope that answers the question somewhat. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a question from Hoodoo, Texas, who says, the Nazis broke themselves on the Kursk salient, and will the Russians do the same?
Maybe. I feel like the Germans really broke themselves during the Battle of Moscow and Stalingrad, but they did do pretty badly at Kursk in terms of the losses as well. So I would have to say, yeah, maybe they would, but there is no battle happening at Kursk right now. But who knows? Maybe one will happen in the future, so they might. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. Also, Matthew, I had to tell you, the reason why I did that whole "I got a story to tell you" thing is because one of the reenactors is watching. And he's actually at work right now, and he's running the stream on the TV. So I've said that.
Well, howdy to you, reenactor friend.
And also, Matthew, he just said that his boss just died laughing because he's in there and he just heard that. So now we're giving them an ultra shout out. But still, I hope you enjoyed.
When you first said that, you said his boss died, and he said laughing after. I was like, oh, okay.
His boss died, bleh. Laughing. But still. Oh man, with that, we're on to the next. But I hope y'all enjoyed that over there. I'm not gonna say where y'all are because there might be someone crazy trying to send y'all an anthrax spore through the mail. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a question from Duncan VR. He says, question, what other army or navy bases inside of Russia should Ukraine blow up with missiles or sabotage? And of course, Baba.
All of them. Every single one of them. Like, why limit ourselves to just a few? Why not hit all of them if they have the ability? Now, if we're talking about limited numbers of missiles, I would say to target most of those against a major supply hub routes and rail yards. Like, for example, I would have a missile fired into the rail yard in Rostov-on-Don. We got to find it, though, because for some reason Rostov-on-Don's rail yard is elusive. Where the hell is it? Well, there's a small one here. That was a little too close to residential areas, so you can't hit that one. Where the hell's there? Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. I forgot. I'm thinking about this in an American perspective, Matthew, where our rail yards are outside of town because because there's all of that not in my backyard stuff where we move everything out of town, like the substations and all that stuff. I forgot that never happened in the Soviet Union because there was no such thing as people lodging a protest against the government, or you just went to the gulag. So they would build the rail yards right in the middle of the residential areas, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. So there really is no way to hit the rail yards unless if you probably wanted to end up killing civilians. So I guess that is out of the picture. You would have to hit military bases and airfields. And it appears that we actually have a airfield that has some pretty massive Mi-26s. They appear to be inactive, and we see a lot of airframes that have been chewed up back here. And we also see some Ka-52s. Those are certainly operational. Maybe hit that with a missile. Or
It's the maybe.
maybe hit that with a missile. I don't know. We'll have to put that one up to review. Boom, 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 boom. There's some cannibalized Su-24s and a MiG-29 out here. Nah, don't hit those. Those aren't being used, clearly. There's another airfield at the Rostov-on-Don airport, which clearly was a military airfield at some point, and now it's been converted into a normal airfield. You can just tell by how basic it looks. It's certainly not a civilian airfield at its origin. There's another airfield down here. I don't know what the hell this one was used for, because this one looks basic as hell. So I don't know. I mean, I guess airfields are really the only thing you can hit unless you wanted to kill civilians. So I would say target all of the airfields that were within range with these missiles, because that's about the best opportunity one could get. So with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Ashley Fitzsimmons, who says, have you seen Australia is sending cardboard drones?
Cardboard drones?
Must be from IKEA.
Australia sending cardboard drones, bleed. Cardboard, bleed. Cardboard drones. Australian company supplying Ukraine with cardboard drone. Look, it's an all-on.
What in the world?
Crikey, mate. It's a cardboard drone. That's a little wild.
I mean, is it going to hold up against water, though?
Man, this thing goes flying off one day, never comes back. Reason? Rain. It just literally starts sogging on itself. But still, interesting. I never heard of these, but fairly interesting here that the folks down under are sending something that comes straight from the down under, which is this cardboard drone. Now, Matthew, you know what I'm talking about here. We'll say that in jest, and then there'll be that one person that went off every single time whenever we joked about anything with Australia.
Hey, are you trying to talk about Australia, mate?
You better not be talking about them. I'm going to cave your face in. It was like that 3 times, I think. And we were just doing it in jest. Like it's okay to be proud of your country, but if you're that proud of it to the point that we can't even make a joke and jest about it, that's a little weird. And also threatening us isn't that great either. But anyways,
I'm kind of shocked because I thought there would be a lot more people that get offended over jokes. There's actually only a handful, a small amount, maybe 5% of the people that watch that are actually offended by the jokes. I'm actually pretty happy to see that most people can still take a joke.
Well, here's the thing, Matthew, and this is what I always say. The news lies about everything, and both sides of the news lie about how people can't take jokes anymore. They lie about almost everything, but people can still take jokes. Like, if you've seen, and thank you, Saturday Night Live, for, copyright almost striking us a while ago for showing 8 seconds of a clip, so thanks. But still, if you look at what Saturday Night Live was putting out recently, I mean, they were going after everyone, like on this last bit that they've come out with a little while ago, and the jokes were just off the wall. Like, you would think that they wouldn't have flown well, and apparently they were incredibly well received. And I honestly think that all of this crap, where everyone's saying on every single side that no one could take a joke, I think that's bull. Because, running this for a year, I've seen that almost the large majority of people, save maybe like a handful, take almost every joke incredibly well and understand it is a joke. So, there you have it. That's my take on the whole situation of comedy nowadays. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a question from, let's see here, Marion Deemert, who says, how else do you guys think the Russian oligarchs in Putler were able to pay for palaces and mega yachts?
Well, they were able to pay for them through massive amounts of corruption, and usually grifting right off of government institutions like the military, which seems to have done them wrong. So yeah, it's just done them a little wrong now, but that's where they were able to get the yachts, the mansions, and all that stuff. Was just straight up exploiting the entire country for it. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a question from, let's see here, Christian Cruz, who says, the way people from the Far East are drafted to the Russian army and the tactics they are using, isn't Putin committing genocide by the hands of the Ukrainian army?
Kind of is, yes, I would say so. That's actually something interesting enough that isn't new. Usually militaries throughout most of history were used to get the poor and usually people that a village didn't like to go off and hopefully die. That was kind of like the hope for most of a military's history, except for the United States. That's a little different with the United States beyond the colonial era, from what I understand. But like, for example, the English Civil War, hell, both armies were made up of like the dregs of society. Like the military of the parliamentarians of the royalists would come through and be like, we are recruiting men to join our impressive army. And then they'd sit there and go, hey, you homeless guy, you go join the army. Or, hey, the guy we don't like in town who weirdly looks at little kids, you go join the army. And then they'd send them off and hopefully they wouldn't come back. That was kind of the hope. So in context of the Russians taking a group that they don't like, in sending them to go die, that's actually nothing new historically. But the idea of doing it on racial grounds is a little new. Well, actually, that's fairly new. That's something that would come around in like the last century or a century and a half. Because before then, it was really just directed at the dregs of society. Whatever culture viewed as the dregs of society, it was just directed at them at large. But going and directing it at certain groups, like the folks in Russia from the Far East, that is brand new over the past century and a half. So I would say that is a form of genocide. It certainly is. It's just that they're not doing it by their own hands. They're putting them in the army and then allowing the Ukrainians to do the work that they otherwise would have to do. That doesn't mean that the Ukrainians shouldn't stop fighting the Russian army, though, but that is what it is. So with that, I hope that does address that, at least in my opinion, fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next question goes to Fushikon, who says, what is the enforcer's position on collard greens? Are they a proper Southern food, like okar? I think I'm going to say okra.
Okar, our Nissan Altima. I love the taste of the Nissan Altima. But still, I love okra. Fried okra is delicious, like incredibly good. And he was asking, what foods do we like?
He was saying, what's your position on collard greens? I've only had them once, never touch them again. I hate them.
Collard greens. I like Brussels sprouts. Are Brussels sprouts and collard greens the same thing?
No, I think collard greens are different.
Oh, yeah, these things, I don't really like them that much. I remember them now.
Oh, jeez.
That thing was nasty. So with that, I hope that does answer that fairly well. And we're on to the next one.
The biggest, not the biggest bird, but the biggest wasp or fly or something just flew right in my face. Nearly poked my eye out, and now it just flew out of the room and probably off to the corgi. So I'm probably gonna hear yelping in a minute.
Dude,
but anyways,
Mr. Corgi's in there with a stick in his mouth. And he's like trying to poke it at the wasp, going, "Get back, Isaac."
Might have to go check on him in a minute. But anyways, up next we have a question from Leonce Pierre, who says, "What are the chances that Ukraine is holding Bakhmut to force the orcs to feed more troops into the grinder while waiting for the mud to dry?"
Reread the line, please. Reread the line. What happened?
What are the chances that Ukraine is holding Bakhmut to force the orcs to feed more troops into the grinder while waiting for the mud to dry?
The chances are somewhat high. I mean, like, that's about as good a guess as any as to why they're holding it, because beyond that point, there really is no good point for them holding Bakhmut, so that may be the reason. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. That might be the reason why they're doing it. And with that, we're on to the next one. Also, Matthew, I see a lot of people... JB said chard in spinach is better. I don't know what chard in spinach.
Chard?
Spinach. What is chard in spinach?
Is that what Popeye eats?
I have iron deficiency.
I eat me spinach and some Swiss chard.
Yeah, but it's a tumor. But anyways, so apparently it's Swiss.
Oh man, that means it's neutral, no taste.
Oh no. Oh no. When you put this thing in a bowl near like say Brussels sprouts, this thing goes, we have no involvement in international affairs of other countries. So if you put it near an American squash, it goes, your people, we were inspired by your form of system of government to set up our own, and we thank you so much for the opportunity. I didn't know what a chard was before this, but anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a question from Governor Ivy. Nice. He's also local to us, by the way. He's down there somewhere at some Papa John's around here. But he says, you really think they could do this for every city like this in Ukraine? And he's referencing Bakhmut.
They could, but it's tough and it's very tricky, especially with the situation they find themselves in now, because they're trying to do that for every town, which hypothetically they could. They stand to lose a lot of men doing that. So I don't know. I mean, you know, it's a little risky, I'll say that, but they could do it hypothetically. So with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a question from AD, who says, how long until the world holds Putin and his army accountable for war crimes?
Sadly, the reality is, unless we defeat them and it's an unconditional surrender or something similar in an open war, we probably will never be able to hold these people accountable. So, sadly, I'll have to say it's actually highly unlikely, in my opinion. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Christian Cruz, who says, did you see the video that Madhyar put out? He was mad that he was being withdrawn.
We did see that. That actually came out days ago. I don't think we actually got a translation for it. But, well, yeah, actually we did. Yeah, we did. He wasn't that displeased with it. He said I would say some stuff about my commanders, but I won't. Which is kind of unfortunate to know that they had the spirit to keep going and keep fighting in the area, but apparently they were withdrawn and taken somewhere else for some reason. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Matthew normally just said a funny joke. He said, Erdogan won't allow Swiss chard to be eaten with turkey on Thanksgiving.
Oh, jeez.
That's actually a good one. I like that. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And also, Ham, dumb, and they're not dumb questions. They're good questions. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and let's wait a minute. Oh gosh, look, there's one of these people that got upset. We told a joke about Australia, so they came in with a low blow. Nice.
Where? Who is it? Who is it?
Just got rid of him.
Got rid of him? I don't see him. I'm in the live chat
must
too.
Have your top chat.
No, I don't. Could you take the message and send it to me on Discord DM so that way I can read it?
Are you sure you don't see it?
No, I don't. I can't. I physically don't see it.
Let me send it.
I'm scrolling through.
That's crazy. Like literally, why would they do the exact thing we were just talking about and like prove our point?
Oh
look,
man,
they got all like messed up and like freaked out about it.
Hang on. Let me make sure to rub salt in the wound on this one by reading it in an Australian accent. Wow, you guys aren't funny. I can't take your jokes. Well, I can't take your jokes. Your sense of humor is just terrible. Your Australian accent is not a joke either. Crikey, it's just shit. I quite like when someone does a good job at it. That's actually more British, but getting the point across, Those are the kind of people that aren't bots that do get banned because we're just trying to throw some jokes around, just have a bit of banter, and then they come and take it personally. Like, I'm totally fine with people making jokes about America because they're probably fairly good jokes that are based in truth for a good bit and hilarious as hell. I don't know why people take jokes personally like that.
That's the type of person you make a joke like, you know what the Australian's favorite restaurant is? What? Outback. He goes, shut up, man! Shut your mouth and stop making fun of my country.
Oh man! And then what's funny because over a course of a year, you finally get to catch up with some of these people and see what their like, I guess, lifespan looks like on YouTube. They'll be over on another channel somewhere saying they banned me unreasonably. I politely asserted my topics and they just banned me like brutes. And then they'll come in here and say stuff like that. It's the funniest thing ever. And then Tippy said, think British rednecks enforcer. Ooh! I'm just kidding. We love the Australian and New Zealand viewers because a lot of y'all are in here and y'all are really cool. And also y'all cities look really nice down there too. So with that, we're on to the next one. But, you know, like, wait before long, Matthew. We'll make a joke about Germany and there'll be a German viewer in here going, Geschlechtvergleich, going up too. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is from Hoodoo, Texas. And this question is going to go to everyone. I'm going to put up a poll about it because he asked me to put one. So there we go. The question is, will you become depressed or disappointed if Bakhmut falls?
Good question. I would say no, it'll stay fine. Oh, wow. It looks like a large majority of people are saying that. Good. Oh, it's dropping. We'll let that one gather up votes. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next question goes to Dark Warrior 137, who says, if Russia collapses like the Soviet Union and it ceases to exist as a government, what will happen to the war reparations after the war is over?
What will happen to the war reparations when the war is over? I guess we'll just continue to hold the seized assets. I'm not really sure. No one's really clarified in the Western world what we're doing with Russian assets after this war is over. Because
I think they would. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I think they would simply seek reparations from whatever new government forms afterward, after the current one collapses.
And they might forgive it and say, you know what, as a new government, they weren't responsible, you know, and if they're anti the former government, they will probably let it slide and we won't make them pay reparations. And so with that, I hope that answers that fairly well. And also, Matthew, I don't know if you noticed this. That's just funny to me. There's been this guy here in the live chat called Alan the whole night, and every once in a while I see him saying, "I'm trying to test their sense of humor to see if I get banned for joking." And then his joke is homeschool much, and that's it. like what's the punchline? Like, it's like, where's the punchline? Like, that's all I'm wondering.
And also, no, we didn't go to homeschool. We actually went to public school, grades 1 through 12.
Oh,
so
God,
that was a joke that wasn't even legit.
Yeah, and it was
Man,
rough.
what, are you trying to make fun of me or something?
Yeah, and then here it comes, Matthew. Now that I've said that and said, where's the punchline? He'll go, you shouldn't be able to treat viewers like that. It's just like you've been saying the same thing for 2 hours. But anyways, we were actually put, in all honesty, Alan, to answer your question, we were actually put in public school. Not private school, not homeschool, public school. And that, I've got to be honest with you, with the public school we went to was hell on earth. It was like prison almost. So with that, I hope that kind of addresses that.
I have to like completely agree with that. Like, he's not exaggerating whatsoever.
Yeah,
it wasn't well, I don't know a political way to put that, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but it was bad.
It was bad. Like, well, it wasn't, well, yeah, I can't say that either. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so we have a question from Richard Parnell, who says, Enforcer, here's a hypothetical for you. Could Moldova invite the UA to assist with Transnistria, in return, provide bases for the Ukraine Air Force, negating NATO supply of aircraft indirectly?
That was the sound of the missile flying off, if you could hear that. What happened? You're stack of spaghetti jars at the spaghetti store. But can you reread that line again? Because for some reason, it didn't connect.
Could Moldova invite Ukraine to assist with Transnistria in return, provide bases for the Ukraine Air Force, negating NATO's supply of aircraft indirectly?
Possibly. I mean, like, that's actually a really good idea. I had to hear that a second time. That's possible, but that would require some very like dealings like that seem simple when we talk them out, but they're incredibly difficult to actually get done behind the scenes from what we're able to see. They have to be fairly straightforward things one at a time. So it's possible, but it's going to be fairly difficult. So with that, I hope I answered that one fairly well. And we're going to answer 3 more questions. 3 more questions, then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream.
All right. Excuse me. Also,
wait, hang on. Alan sat there and said, I thought we can joke. Yes, you can, but where's the punchline? Like, that's what I asked you. Where is the punchline of that? You say, homeschool much? You've just been saying that for 2 hours. Where's the punchline? Like, jokes have punchlines. There is no punchline there. And I've just been looking at that for 2 hours, and I'm like, where is it? And now Matthew banned him because he's just here.
He's been trolling before that, but now it's like obvious as anything. He's trying to stir up trouble. He's not testing nothing. He's just trying to use that as a cover.
Yeah. You know what, Matthew? I feel like that ought to be a merch design idea. Homeschool much? Just put that on a shirt, like just the text, because that's like the goofiest thing. Testing our humor. Like, yeah, you can joke about whatever you want on here as long as it isn't rude to folks or rude to us. And it's funny. I mean, but asking homeschool much just like 50 times, that's not even humor. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and let's quickly address this poll.
Vitaly said homeschool much?
Yes. But anyways, this poll says, will you become depressed or disappointed if Bakhmut falls? The poll, inspired by Hoodoo Texas's question, 76% said no, morale will stay fine. 13% said yes, morale will drop. And 11% said unsure. And I have to say that since it's become such a symbolic town or city, I think morale will drop slightly, but it's not going to be devastating. It's not like it's going to, take everybody down to tatters, but it'll drop slightly. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say morale will probably stay fine, unless if people start really getting entrenched in the idea Bakhmut matters. Because Bakhmut doesn't matter, so if you believe it does, then you'll probably be down in the dumps for it. But if you've been on the same page everyone else has been on for maybe 8 months or 5 months at this point, where it isn't that big of a deal, it probably won't be that much of a morale drop. And so with that, I hope I answered that fairly well. And also, I gotta adjust this. Wait, what do you got, Matthew?
I can't repeat it. Can't repeat it.
Oh man, why in the world am I not seeing these things, man? I'm not seeing anything that's like pointing out at me. Oh yeah, Taylor McDowell said, dang, people get banned in here for not a whole lot. It is a whole lot. If you watch that guy for a while, he had been doing that for 2 hours. And when we allow people to stay in here like that really have no point rather than just to try and instigate us, usually they don't get a rise out of us. So then they start attacking viewers and they start a fight in the live chat. So it would turn into something. Trust me, we've been here for a year, over a year at this point.
Trust me, bro.
Yeah, trust me, bro. We've been over here for a year at this point. Oh, longer than a year. And we've seen just about every single way anyone comes in here and starts up anything. And I promise you, the whole entire point of them being here was to start something. It's just a matter of time before it started to blow up and people started to get in fights with this guy. So with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And I wonder if he's from that, those hungry folks, that snack squad. But anyways, let's see.
Call them out.
Up next, we have a question from Heather Romer. He says, Matt, do you think it is true that Kadyrov was poisoned or maybe killed his liver with too much vodka? Yeah. Heather, I think, personally, I speculate that he was finally poisoned because he had a poisoning attempt a month prior and it was failed. They caught it, but I think they got him the second time. But I will admit, and I want to make this clear, I have no evidence to back that up yet, but I have a gut feeling. So take it with a grain of salt. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say he may have been poisoned. It seems likely, in all honesty. So, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Also, it's no big deal, Taylor. I was just addressing it because when you said it's for no reason, I promise you, when we ban people, there is a reason. We don't do it just for the hell of it, just on small whims. We've seen it, we're like State Farm at this point. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. We know what we're doing with the bots. Well, not the bots, but also instigators and, I don't know, what do we call them? People trying to get a rise out of folks. I guess that's the best way to say it. We've seen it all, so we just take care of them.
Rise.
We nip them in the bud before things start blowing up, because it's supposed to be pleasant here. It's supposed to be pleasant, and that's why that's why Matthew puts in overtime work in making sure that we keep it pleasant in the live chat instead of allowing a free for all battle and a fight where people are posting graphic images in a sexual way of animals and stuff like that, which we've seen on the Discord, which has been put down. We try and keep everything civil. So with that, moving on to
I'm not trying to brag or anything, but this is the only live chat I've seen on YouTube that actually where people can talk and actually get points out and be heard, and people will respond to it. That's not full of bots. So we're very proud of that.
Or just full of people who are trying to piss off the other person as quick as they can. Like, you know, like when they sit there and ask, do you think an F-16 could be used on a runway in Ukraine? Do you think it can handle the weight of that plane? It couldn't handle the weight of your mom, I'll tell you that. Hey, screw you, man. It starts off as a fight. That's like what every live chat on YouTube is like, and we try and avoid that as best as possible in here and keep it tame. Because we want y'all to actually enjoy talking to each other and enjoy the community we have, and that's why we control it so much. Because on the internet, if y'all haven't been around the internet a lot, you will know, you'll find out eventually, that there's a lot of people on the internet who just want to get a rise out of folks. So with that, I hope we addressed the whole thing about Kadyrov probably being poisoned, because he probably was, and I hope we answered that fairly well. And I think, Matthew, that was our second to last question of the night, if I'm correct.
I think it was, actually. And up next.
Wait, I gotta do the thing. And so with that, we are moving on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and that viewer is CH, who says, I can't remember, but did Russia ever manage to blow up a single Ukrainian ammo depot, or where are they all Russian ammo depots blowing up?
Oh, man, if you wanted to find all the videos of the ammo depots blowing up, you would have to go through like a year and pretty much the entire war past the first month to find them all. There's been hundreds of them. I haven't seen any noticeable big ones lately, but if you want to find the most of them, I would say go back to the mid to late summer of last year, because that's actually got a name for it in Russian war terms. I forgot the name. It was like the pogrom of bases or something like that. And there were so many of them blown up, we had one in the news almost every day, or several of them in the news almost every day. So I hope that addresses that fairly well. I haven't seen a lot of videos of it lately. It seems like it's kind of hard to get, and we maybe get one like once a week or once every other week. But I hope that answers the question fairly well. And of course, with that, we have rounded out tonight's stream. Unbelievably, we made it to $8,900 on the fundraiser, which is just a couple of dollars shy of $9,000. Absolutely unbelievable to think that we've made it so high in the fundraiser. And of course, I have to thank every single one of y'all for coming in here and watching this stream, and also helping us to reach such a fantastic and magnificent goal. The amount of children that will most likely be saved and helped by Save the Children due to that $9,000 amount of support will probably be fairly large. And I'm sure that many of those families and many of those children, if they could thank y'all, would certainly want to thank each and every one of y'all for being a part of the Lee Spring Army and helping this channel to continue to save lives in Ukraine. And so with that, we have just rounded out this week of streams. I thank you all so much once again for watching. We're about to be tuning off, but make sure if you did enjoy to subscribe and show back up on Tuesday when we start this stream up again, because we run this stream every single day of the week except for Monday, which is tomorrow. So we will not be running tomorrow, but we will be running 6 days a week after that from Tuesday to Sunday again. I thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, take care, good luck, stay safe, long live the Lee Spring Army, and Slava Ukraini!
And good night, and I'll see you all on Twitter. Did you beep the Twitter?
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Слава, ні воля, ще усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького